Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our Planning Commission meeting today. My name's Todd Lehman. I'm Vice Chair. I'll be conducting our meeting today. I've got some announcements that I'll try to make, and then we'll get started with business. I want to let everybody know that the Planning Commission gets a packet about a week ago of cases to review. So the Planning Commission has that about a week in advance so we can review. And so there are some cases that have a recommendation to approve or approve with conditions. I'll typically ask the staff if there's anyone, or I'll ask the audience if there's anyone that is here to speak in opposition. Opposition doesn't necessarily mean you're against it, but you may have some statements you'd like to make. When I ask if there's any opposition, if you'd raise your hand, because we do have some opportunity for opposition to speak. If there is a recommendation to approve or approve with conditions, I may ask the applicant if they're good with the conditions. If they're good with the conditions, we may move on with a motion from the Planning Commission, because we have had an opportunity to review, especially for those cases that don't have opposition. If there is a case to deny, I'll ask the same questions relative to opposition. But if you have a recommendation to deny and you're the applicant, you will have an opportunity to speak. We do speak. Again, I need to know who wants to speak, because we have a certain allotted time. I'll ask you to come up to the podium here on my left, your right. In cases where the applicant speaks and there's opposition, we have 7 minutes for the applicant. Well, let me back up. We'll usually go through staff report. The staff has obviously put together information for a recommendation, so we'll do a staff report. Then the applicant will have 7 minutes to present. If there's opposition, again, if I ask for opposition and you raise your hand, the opposition will come over to my left, and they'll have 9 minutes collectively to speak. So I would ask that if there's multiple people that need to, or that would like to speak in opposition, that if a statement's made and you're 3 or 4 back into the field, that you don't have to make that same statement, because we will try to stick to the 9 minutes. I may also tell someone that's speaking at the podium, say in opposition, and there's multiple people behind, I will try to watch that time to try to give everybody an opportunity to speak. There will be certain occasions we may extend the time. In the event that we do, we'll extend it for the applicant also. One piece of information: any statements or questions need to be posed to the dais, not to the audience or other people. It needs to all be focused on the dais, and those, it won't be a back and forth. Just so if you do have some questions, you should come up and state those questions, and then depending on whether the staff has a response or the Planning Commissioner may have a response, that will follow. It will not be a back and forth from the podium. I will make sure everybody's aware that the Planning Commission, except in cases of plats, will go through plats first, which have been reviewed by staff and are coming with recommendations. All zoning cases, this is a recommendation body, so we will make a recommendation today, and those cases will move on to either the City Council or the County Commission. I believe there's a form, hopefully maybe in the rotunda, that talks about the dates that those will be heard at those legislative bodies. Did I miss anything, Mr. Schultz?
No, I think you covered it pretty accurate.
Okay. With that, we'll move into our agenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I don't know. I think we do have a new PC member. I think most people met Justin downstairs this morning at lunch. So you want to formally introduce Justin, if you will.
Mr. Justin Holland. Raise your hand, Justin. Is a new member on the Planning Commission. He does sit on. There are certain members that are appointed by the county mayor and certain by the city mayor. Mr. Holland's a county mayor appointee. So welcome, Justin. Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to recognize Commissioner Highlander is in the audience today, and I believe he's here to speak on a particular case in consideration of the agenda.
Thank you, Councilman. Welcome, Commissioner Holland. Okay, we will move into subdivision plats under preliminary plats. The first plat is SD 2021-0034. It's McKenzie Farm Phase 2, lots 85 through 97 at 7600 block of Pepper Tree Lane. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Motion carries. Preliminary plat SD 2021-0036, Sedman Hills Phase 5, lots 264 to 288, 8,000 block of Ashby Way. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve. Has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next plat is SD 2021-0037, Sanctuary at Signal Forest Phase 1, lots 1 through 35, located at the 4700 block of Signal Forest Drive. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Is there a motion? I have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Preliminary plat SD 2021-0038, Waterstone Ridge Phase 3, lots 87 through 140, located at 4560 Waterstone Circle. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Plat SD 2021-0039, Black Creek Phase 13, located at 3800 block of Cummings Highway, lots 801 through 983 and lots 3001 and 1005. I have a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? I have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you. I was going to second the motion, Chairman, just to make a note, that's not District 3, and we need to reflect that's District 1 in the city of Chattanooga.
Thank you. Yeah. I think the district, the Helms County district's also different. Maybe 3. Lookout Valley. Okay. If you'll make that note, Brian. Okay. I have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. I don't believe there was any opposition. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Is that the variance?
Yes, that's
Okay.
next.
Okay. I think I got a that motion was passed. We'll move on to a variance. Our variance cases. The first case is SD 2021-0040. The variance for the minimum required lot frontage and lot size in an R1 residential zone located at 1116 Dartmouth Street. Any opposition?
Mr. Chairman, we also have in front of you packets of opposition letters, emails we received today in this request.
Right. Is the applicant present? Okay, great. I'll let Mr. Schultz take us through the staff recommendation, and then you'll both have an opportunity to speak. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is SD 2021-40. This is a request for a variance on lot frontage and minimum lot size. It's in North Chattanooga at 116 Dartmouth Street. As you can see on your screen, it's one existing lot, has frontage on Dartmouth and Tremont. The applicant wishes to subdivide this property pretty much equally to have a lot facing Tremont and a lot facing Dartmouth. Lot 1 will have a lot size of 6,900 square foot, roughly. Lot 2 will be 6,000 square feet. And lot frontage is 50 foot for both lots. In the R1 zone, the minimum lot frontage is 60 foot with a minimum lot size of 7,500 square foot. This is just an aerial view showing you the lot highlighted in red where this request is. This is a tax map. The site is located in red triangle. Some of the adjacent lot sizes it's roughly a range of 6,500 square foot on either side. To the west, the east, sorry. And if you look to the west, you're looking at the property, it's about a 12,000 square foot lot. The other lot is 12,250. Then directly across the street on Dartmouth, you have lots from 9,600 square foot to 95, and then a little further down, you have them about 4,000 square foot and 6,000 square foot in size. All the lots, for the most part, on Dartmouth and Tremont are 50-foot wide lots. You do have some that's a little larger, like 63 and 64, but roughly it's 50 foot along Dartmouth and Tremont. This area was platted in 1890. It is a lot of record, and I'm sort of highlighting the screen. On the left-hand side, you see the circle. That's the area in question. That's one lot now as platted back in 1890. This is a view of the home that's on the property at 116 Dartmouth Street. And this is a view from Tremont behind it. It is a steeply sloped lot. So you can see, next picture, the homes to the right of this picture, that is Dartmouth Street. So Tremont does sit to the top of Dartmouth. Staff looked at this and felt, frontage is already there. It's nothing dissimilar in that area. All the lots are 50 foot wide on Dartmouth and Tremont Street. Also, in terms of lot size, it's very similar to the lots to the east of the site and also across the street. So it's not very dissimilar lot pattern in this area. So staff recommended to approve. Again, we did receive opposition emails. Most of that dealt with small lot, urban infill development, and impacts on stormwater and drainage if this site's cleared. Again, we're just looking at a plat. If it's platted and recorded, there's still hurdles they have to go through in terms of getting building permits and meeting stormwater requirements. So staff did recommend to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Okay, sir, if you'd like to come up, you'll have 7 minutes. Please give us your name and address, and then we'll hear from opposition.
Hello, my name is Dustin Smith. Thanks for listening to me today. I brought some backup over here. This is my wife, Sarah, and 15-month-old daughter. We've owned this property for about 10 years now. We got it when we first got married and lived in the small house that currently faces Dartmouth Street for a while until we built on the south side. And we looked at the time whether or not we could subdivide that property, but it really didn't meet square footage requirements at the time, even under the urban infill rules. So at this point, we heard about the 6,000 square feet being the going forward minimum in the county anyway, and the city was going to vote on that. So we made the petition at that time to go forward with at least this process for the potential variance. We looked at having a survey done with 3 different potentials for where we'd supply that splitting of the lot. One of those was a retaining wall right behind the house, which resulted in a small front lot with a large back lot facing Tremont Street. Another one was right at the halfway point, and then the one that got the RPA most support was the existing lot line with the neighbors. So if you look at the actual picture, it shows exactly where the neighbor's property line is we wanted to split it at least at that point to give an equal size lot to what the neighbor had at the time. So going forward, what we're asking for is really just a split for us to build a home on the new lot if possible.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Smith? Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Ledford.
Dustin, is that right?
Dustin?
Yes,
correct.
Thank you for coming down today. I have a couple quick questions, as I normally do in cases like this. Have you spoken to Councilwoman Hill and brought her up to speed on this particular request?
On this particular request?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I would highly recommend always doing that. It helps quell and also get some dialogue going with the neighbors. Have you talked to your adjacent property owners and
Yes, at least the ones on Dartmouth Street. The ones that are, I guess, across the street over on more the Hanover side, I have not spoken with, but the ones at least on the property frontage on Dartmouth, in my understanding, are all in support.
Okay. I definitely saw Councilwoman Hill at the council office just a little while ago, and she kind of looked a little frazzled about this case not being contacted by you. So I want to throw that out there for
my apologies. I thought that I was
for
really
the-
going through the proper process for it.
Yeah, always reach out to your council reps in the city. That's your first stop to get their opinion, because they have their fingers on the pulse of a lot of concerns, and especially when it comes to steep slopes. So I would highly recommend that happen. And I'll stop there and then see if anybody else has any
Mr. Chairman,
questions.
I want to clarify something. This is a variance request.
Yeah.
It's not a zoning case. It wouldn't go in front of council. Just make-
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, but
Yeah,
still, yeah, so thank you for that clarification. But we still need to involve the council rep because they're going to, at some point, probably they will be contacted by folks. And that's where a lot of this comes into play is if the variance were to pass, then it will ultimately end up in her email box and phone call, so.
Understand.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions for applicant? Okay, if you'll take a seat, you'll have 2 minutes
Thank
for
you.
a vote. Sir, if you'd like to come up, if you would give us your name and address, and you do have 9 minutes.
Excellent. And would you mind to put the aerial shot up? Thank you. So first off, start off, my name's Ben Connor. I reside at 1105 Hanover. So if you're looking at the street map here, it's the house in the lower left-hand corner, not the one with the driveway, which is the only driveway going on Fremont Street at that point. And I have something prepared, but I wanted to real quick answer the question that I guess I'm going to get from you. I did contact Ms. Hill and Commissioner Sharp to make sure that they were aware of what was going on in the area. So that might be how Jenny was made aware. So hello again, my name is Ben Connor, and I do reside at 1105 Hanover Street, directly behind and over Tremont Street from the lot being discussed today. I spoke with Ms. Thompson when I received the letter and followed that call with a brief email that you all should have in front of you, along with a handful of emails from the folks like myself that live on Hanover, and something that we haven't talked about in this meeting is Tremont Street itself. So I wanted to make sure and come here today and passionately plead my case to hold true to the code that has many good things for the code, but the reason above all is the safety of my family and fellow Hamilton County residents. Tremont Street, which is right there, is already a problem area for pedestrians that needs attention. That's a matter for another meeting, but here today we can do our part to deny this variance and help that street stay safe for the pedestrians, the runners, the walkers, the bikers, the golf carts that go up and down it without a sidewalk at all right now. I've commented to the safety of my 4 children a couple times in this meeting in the email, and also the children of the area that need to be addressed first, and this variance can help their safety. I ask the board to please hold the code and keep our beautiful city just that, beautiful and safer for the effort. I would gladly answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for opposition? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If you'd like, you've got 2 minutes just as a response.
I understood there probably would be some opposition to this particular split for the exact reasons which I actually completely agree with, just in terms of safety, because my understanding Tremont, at least at some point, was an alley. It wasn't even a real street. And he's right. At this point, it does not have sidewalks. And I think that our piece of property is the longest one on that particular distance between Dartmouth and Tremont that potentially could be split. There might be 1 or 2 more depending on what the rules are going forward. We were just looking for, based on square footage, did we have enough to actually build a R1 home? So I think that at least what we've asked for in terms of the variance, to me it sounds fair. I think that we would want to do something tasteful for the neighborhood and definitely safe. You know, whether that's sidewalks or anything that we need to do in terms of verge or curb to make sure that the safety rules are followed. So it's not our intention to curb any rules that could affect otherwise safety.
Well, and I'm Sarah Smith, so I would like to address you as well and your concerns. So one of the reasons that we're looking specifically at doing this is currently we actually live in Hill City. And so we're not in the zoning for Normal Park, which I think everyone here understands is a desired place to be for children. We obviously have one, and we have another on the way. And where we live currently, we're outgrowing, right? So one of the things that we saw an opportunity here was to potentially build something that would support our growing family. So I understand the concern for sure about children, and we are familiar with the area and would not want to add to anything that would make that potentially unsafe for residents in the area, whether it be on Tremont backing up to it, or Dartmouth. But I think for us, again, it was a consideration that we were hoping the city would take into account from a personal perspective. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions from the commission? And let me just make sure, Mr. Schultz. So it is a variance for both lot frontage. Currently, it's a 60-foot requirement. They're requesting a 50, and then also a lot size, correct?
That is correct. It's 50 foot. They're requesting, it's a 10-foot variance. Lot 1 is about a 546 square foot variance request, and Lot 2 is about 1,500 square foot.
So the current is 60 foot and 7,500, so it's a
Right.
request for both. Okay.
Right.
Questions from commission?
I think the applicant made a comment about the county changing to R1. That was specifically in the county and not necessarily the city on the square footage.
Correct.
Just to clarify.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Councilman.
Yeah, I was just curious, have you drawn this out at all, like a site plan at how you intend to construct a new home for us to look at?
You know, we have not.
I mean, even a napkin sketch would be
Right.
kinda
You mean
helpful.
in terms of like where a house would sit?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
We have not, because as he had mentioned, with this size lot, there would probably be additional variances that would be required to potentially build a home. So I've not looked to see where setbacks are, so if we
Okay.
could build without variance or not.
Well, you led me to my next question for staff, and that is, are we anticipating any trips to Boza?
I would think so. Because
Yeah.
it's a 50-foot wide lot, time you put on the setbacks, it loses its lot of record status.
Yeah.
And a new structure would have to go in front of BOZA. You know, this is a very steep lot, and I don't know what, that is a hardship that BOZA would look at. You don't want to answer for that board, but it would have to go in front of them for that variance on setbacks.
Okay.
Most likely.
That's what I was thinking too. Okay, thank you very much for,
You're welcome. Thank
yes,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Questions, motions? Yes, Mr. Matthews. Have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will respectfully vote no on this because I do anticipate several issues arising at Boza that I think will probably cause the applicant some problems down the road.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Farmer.
I hear you, Councilman, but I do think the request is within keeping with the neighborhood, the lot size. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to build on it or not, but I think for the purposes of this body, the request is within keeping the neighborhood, and I agree with the staff recommendation.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. We have a motion to approve the variance. Has been properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? One opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. We'll move into old business on our agenda. The first case is 2021-0137. It's located at 1620 Watauga Street. How do you say that? Watauga. Sorry, I'm a county guy. City of Chattanooga rezone from R2 residential zone and M2 light industrial zone to UGC urban general commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to deny the UGC urban general commercial zone and approve R3 residential zone with conditions. Is there opposition here that would like to speak? Is the applicant present? Okay. We'll hear from staff and then you'll have an opportunity. Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is case 2021-137, request to rezone from R2 and M2 to UGC. Proposed use of residential townhomes. Property is 1.42 acres in size. Applicant's proposing 26 units, and that equals a density of 18.3. This property is located at 1620 Watauga Street. It's 400 feet to the south of East Main Street. You can see on the side on the screen, the yellow square, that's the site. You see East Main Street to the north. This is a view of the site. It's currently vacant. You do have warehousing to the west of the site along East Main Street. This is a view south of the site. This is a view west of the site, some of the single-family detached dwellings. And this is a view east of the site in Ferger Place, which is one of our historic neighborhoods. You can see it's a single-family detached dwelling. This property is zoned R2. To the south and west is R2. To the east of this site is R1 along Evening Side, which again is a historic neighborhood. And to the north along Main Street, there's M2 and C2. There is no zoning history for this particular piece of site. However, in 2017, there was a request to rezone 1212, 1220, and 1226 East 13th Street to UGC. That was approved by City Council. That's further to east of the site. And in 2018, also a request was approved to rezone from M1 to UGC. Again, this is a vacant piece of property. To the east, south, and west of the site are single-family detached dwellings. To the north is commercial and warehousing. This property is located in historic River to Ridge Area 3 plan, which is adopted in 2020. The place type designation for this property is mixed residential, which includes various housing options from multi-story apartment buildings, condos. Primary uses include 2 to 6 unit living attached, cottage court, and courtyard apartments, townhomes, and condos. Staff recommendation at this time was to deny the UGC. The proposal for townhomes is compatible with the place type. However, the UGC zone allows other uses, non-residential uses that are not compatible with the neighborhood. The UGC zone is intended to be located along arterial or collector streets, whereas Watauga Street is characterized as local street. Approving UGC at this location would also set the precedent for future UGCs in this location and could impact the historical neighborhood to the east of the site. So staff recommends R3 and deny the applicant's request. We have 3 proposed conditions. No buildings within 50 feet of the eastern property line where it abuts the R1 residential zone. Again, that's trying to protect Ferger Place from townhomes. Type B, landscape buffer, and a 6-foot tall side obscuring fence required along the eastern property line. Where it abuts the R1, again, another method of trying to protect the Ferger Place development from this development. A maximum front building setback of 15 feet or by calculation as defined in the R3 zone, whichever is less, shall be required along Watauga Street. So staff recommends deny UGC and approve R3. The applicant did supply additional information. I'll let them go through their presentation when they come up to present.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Mr. Payne.
I just have one question. There was no opposition.
We're not aware of any opposition.
And were y'all aware of the conditions and the current what the staff recommends? Yeah. And you were good with that? Okay.
I believe I'll let them speak. The problem with R3, they want to do a 3-story townhome, and we do the setbacks to get 3 stories. That basically, in essence, removes the greening from the middle of the site, so it loses the cottage court. I'll let them speak when they come up.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Farmer.
Have we not in the past, Brian, limited UGC to residential only? I feel like
we have.
I feel like we have. That's a tool that we've done in the past is you can have UGC, but it can only be residential, and we take the whole mixed use out.
You're correct. We have.
Okay.
We've done that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Brian, can we've also limited height in UGC to 2 and 3 stories.
You have.
So that's also an option.
You have. Again, we were recommending R3. We felt at the time R3 made more sense, better sense at this location, more appropriate at this location because of the plan protecting Ferger Place. We were not aware that there's going to be 3-story townhomes.
Yeah.
So the applicant has site plans that indicates how it would be developed as R3 with our conditions versus UGC. You know, I think if you go UGC, it'd be wise to put conditions on it.
Right.
And I have some prepared if that's the direction
I was
the
going to
council
say,
wants to go.
I'm sensing a solution here, and in my conversation with Councilman Byrd last week, I know the need for this type of structure. So let's continue on. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. If you give your name and address, you've got 7 minutes.
Hi, my name's Caitlin Sims. I'm with Chazen Engineering. We're at 1426 Williams Street in Chattanooga. We did come last Planning Commission and we're not aware of the conditions. We have sat down with RPA staff as well as Councilman Byrd and talked over the differences between what RPA recommended and kind of what our site plan is. We would like to pursue UGC, but as you mentioned, we would like to offer some conditions on the property. We would like to do residential only. We don't have any desire to do any commercial uses, which I think qualms kind of some of RPA's concerns. We also would like to offer, same as condition 1, a 50-foot building setback off of Ferger Place to protect that neighborhood and that condition and style. We would also like to offer a 10-foot landscaping type A buffer and a fence along the eastern property line, which again is to protect the historic neighborhood as well. So we kind of offer those 4 conditions up as potential to move forward with this UGC plan, which I don't know is the one on the screen. If you keep, that one is the one that we plan on pursuing. We also have support from some local neighbors, including the M2 that we're adjacent to. We have not heard any opposition, and we have reached out to people. So hopefully this is something the commission can move forward with.
Mr. Chairman, Caitlin had the same conditions I have. I have one other one that's about the height requirement. So if you want to add the height, but basically same conditions that she
We would
read.
like to pursue 3 stories if possible.
3?
Yes, 3.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant or staff?
I think we just need to get this done.
Okay. Well, we'll entertain a motion if that's the will.
Mr. Farmer, he said, no, I defer to you on this one, sir.
Mr. Farmer.
I'll back you up.
Can we note for the record that Darren deferred to me for a motion? This is a good project. It sounds like it's great work between the community, the council person, and I applaud you for that. This is exactly the kind of thing that needs to happen. So I make a motion to approve residential only, no commercial, with a 50-foot setback from Ferger Place, a 10-foot type A landscaping buffer on that east side, and limit your height to 3 stories.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with 4 conditions has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, can staff clarify?
Yes, please.
Is that buffer also including a fence along the eastern property line?
Yes.
Type A
Type A.
with fence.
Top C and wooden fence? Non-obscuring fence?
Yeah, the fence is questionable because there is a sewer easement, but
Okay.
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 Okay, fence is out of the motion. You good with that second, Councilman? Okay. Okay, have a motion to approve in a second. Okay, great. Any other questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Second item on old business is 2021-0138. It's located at 7200 and 7300 Bonnie Oaks Drive. It's to rezone from R1 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition? Okay, so we've got some opposition. Is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz, if you'll take us through this.
Sure. This case was deferred from last month. It's case 2021-138. Request to rezone from R1 to C2, approximately 3.82 acres in size. Proposed use is commercial development. Located at 7200 and 7300 block of Bonnie Oaks, directly across from Silverdale Baptist Church and School. Here's the view of the site from Bonnie Oaks Drive. This is a view north of the site. The site's just on the left-hand side along Silverdale Road. Bonnie Oaks is just to the south of this picture. This is a view looking south towards Silverdale Baptist Church and School. The site's on the right-hand side. This is a view west along Bonnie Oaks Drive. The site's just behind those trees. And this is a view east of the site, directly across Silverdale Road, which is a church. This property is zoned R1. Everything to the south southwest and north is R1. You do have RZ1 a little further north. Then to the east, you have C2. But interesting to note, on this side of Bonnie Oaks, the closest C2 zone is about 800 feet to the east towards I-75. We did have, in 2019, there was a request to rezone this from R1 to R4. Staff recommended to approve, as that use was assisted living facility. So the conditions were residential, office, institutional uses only. No buildings or permanent structures within the floodway. There was opposition at the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended to approve with the same conditions as staff. Application was ultimately withdrawn at City Council. Property located at 2916 Silverdale Road, which is to the south of this site, was rezoned from R1 to C2 in 2018 for a coffee shop with a condition. Property in Old Cleveland Pike was rezoned from R1 to RZ1, which is to the north of the site. That was rezoned with conditions. As I stated a minute ago, the closest C2 on the northern side of Bonnie Oaks is about 900 feet to the southeast along Bonnie Oaks Drive. You can see the arrow pointing on the screen. This is currently a vacant piece of property. To the north is single-family detached. To the south of this site is school and recreation and commercial uses. To the east of the site is a church. And to the west is single-family detached dwellings. This property is located in the floodway and floodplain. Again, you can develop in the floodplain as long as you elevate the structure or flood plue for non-residential uses. But the floodway, you're pretty much restricted from development. So there's a huge floodway that's on this property. This property is located in the Shalford Road Lee Highway Plan, which was adopted in 2005. That plan recommended single-unit residential, which is primarily single-family dwellings. It did recognize that this area may be appropriate for higher density residential, which is why staff recommended approval of the R4, as that assisted living was similar to higher density residential. However, in this case, the applicant is recommending or proposing commercial uses and is not a residential use. It would not be compatible with the adopted plan. So staff recommend to deny the request, as the commercial zone is not compatible with the adopted plan. Proposal is not compatible with development form adjacent residential uses to the north of Bonnie Oaks Drive. Rezoning property to C2 on the northern side of Bonnie Oaks will set a precedent for future requests along this side of Bonnie Oaks Drive. And so staff recommended to deny. The applicant, when he gets time, he did submit some revised or proposed conditions for his request. So during his presentation, I'll have those on the screen.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Any questions for staff? Okay. Sir, if you'll come up, give us your name and address. You'll have 7 minutes, and then, sir, in the back, you'll have some time after he gets done. Thank you.
Ben Hageman, Point Property Group, 1209 Point Center Drive, 37421. So I deferred this from last month, and really Brian, do you have the site plan that you can put up there? That one. So really what we're after is at the corner of Silverdale Road and Bonnie Oaks Drive is for that to be C4. After meeting with several interested parties, and especially Silverdale Church across the street, we came up with several restrictions that we thought would work for them. On parcel 1 and 2, we got to have either an office use or some kind of use to be able to elevate the value of that to make all the property work. So the C2 there, on parcel 3, I'd like to hold, and I've got a whole lot of conditions to put with it, and then R4 on parcel 1 and parcel 2 right there. So after meeting with the church, we went through and highlighted specific items not to do. I sent them a list of all of it, and they sent me back some more items that they felt like should be added, and justifiably they're protecting their school and their church. So you want me to read all these, Brian?
Unless the chairman wishes me to read them.
Well, as long as you've got them, I'm assuming it'll come up in discussion from the commission, and if there's a motion that we're going to consider with them, we'll need them read into the record.
So the applicant really, I think, is requesting a change of the request is now to rezone 2 tracks to R4, keep the one at the corner C2 with conditions. Both.
So that refers to this site plan you have or this property map you have up now?
Correct.
Okay. So parcel 3, they're requesting the C2?
Yes, sir.
And parcel 1 and 2 on here, they're requesting R3?
R4.
Okay.
C2 with conditions and then R4 with
Okay,
conditions.
were you done? I'm sorry. Okay, you'll
if you don't
have,
want me to
you'll
read the
have
conditions, then
okay, you'll have 2 minutes and can discuss some
Okay.
conditions. Are there any questions from?
And I'll
the
leave these up here for Doug.
Councilman Ledford? Hold on. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Ben, I understand you've worked with Silverdale,
Right.
and you've also worked with Councilwoman Burrs
That's right.
on these conditions.
We've met multiple times. Yes, sir.
Okay, and I feel like that's a very strong, important part of this and moving forward. So,
And with Brian as well.
Okay.
I've kind of been through the whole condition
very good, very
list.
good. I think at some point we'll probably need to read these so that all of the commission understands the conditions that have been brought forth. But Karen, you're itching over there. Do you need to jump in?
I just want to clarify that those are conditions for prohibited uses. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Just, I didn't see it on the slide, so anyone here, I just wanted to note that that's recommended to be R4 with prohibiting the uses, lodging, boarding homes, bed and breakfast, and drug, alcohol, and similar in character. And as you're requesting the C2 with the proposed conditions of no bowling alleys, billiard rooms, vehicular repair facilities, dwellings, and outdoor storage with many warehouses.
And motels and hotels.
Motels and
Okay.
hotels.
Yeah.
And then the uses allowed by special permit that are listed here, but those would be prohibited, those would also be prohibited uses.
So I didn't know about that when we were in the meeting, whether we needed to specifically list those or if they have to come back here, if somebody would have to come back here to get.
They can be listed as prohibited
Okay.
uses. I just didn't see prohibited uses here and the words that these uses would be prohibited, so I just wanted clarification for that.
Okay, yeah, so 184, uses permitted special exceptions, open air markets, adult-oriented establishments, and kennel animal daycare facility.
Yeah, everything on the screen would be prohibited.
Oh,
use if
there it is.
Planning Commission goes that direction.
So let me just ask a question. So those are special permits, but we can limit those
Yes.
uses per
Yes,
condition?
if somebody wanted to use that, they would have to come back through the process to lift that condition, then still go
Then
for the
still
vote.
go to front door
Correct.
zoning? Okay.
Okay.
Very good. That was,
Good,
yeah,
okay.
that helps sum up a lot of my questions. I know we have someone who wants to speak, so I want to hear from you.
Mr. Maybe?
I guess just a quick clarification question for staff, if I may. What uses are left in R4? Or what type of uses are left in R4 with those
You
restrictions?
do residential, office uses, restaurants, as long as it's part of the office. R4 only has 2 restrictions, which is lodging, boarding house, and bed and breakfast, drug, alcohol, penal, correctional halfway house. That's the only ones that are restricted in R4.
So it's either a residential product or a
Professional office,
professional office. Okay.
do assisted living type facilities.
Bank.
Hospital.
Medical,
Okay.
dental, churches, laboratories,
Yeah.
offices, studios.
Thank you.
want This?
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, sir, if you'll come up, you've got 9 minutes if you need it. Your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Doug Anderson. I'm the administrator of Silverdale Baptist Church, and our location is at 7236 Bonnie Oaks Drive. We did meet with Ben and property group, and mostly in favor of what he was saying about what they wanted to do. I'm not sure everything is listed there on the conditions, though. On R4, we had 7. I think a lot of them are there, but I'm not sure. And then C2, we had 16 conditions, and that we would like stricken out. I'm not sure you want me to read all those to you. I've got it written down. I can give you a copy. But the main thing is we have a coffee house located there you talked about earlier, and it's set up as a nonprofit LLC. And so any profits that we get go back into local missions. And I've got a long list of the mission organizations we support in Chattanooga. So I just wanted the commission to know that. And so we didn't want a competitor across the street that's going to, for example, sell a lot of coffee, because that's what we do. And we funnel that money back into the community. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am looking at the
Go ahead,
conditions
Ryan.
that are on the screen were sent to me a week and a half ago. Are these the ones, these are different?
These are new ones that Doug responded to that.
Oh, hold on.
Go ahead. This is the exact document you sent me that shows 6.
Yes. Well, no, I've got it right here.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sorry, 7.
Is that R4?
Yeah,
That's 7.
that's the exact document you sent me, yeah.
Okay. And then C4 or C2 I had.
Oh, you're talking about between all documents together. 6, 7, 8. Well, and then you had those were a couple.
Yeah,
We can clarify those. There are a couple that I
Yeah,
did have
and-
on that list.
Yeah.
They requested I
we
add.
can read this off because when
Okay.
the screen was sent to me 2 weeks ago, I don't have the updated version.
Okay.
So, yeah, I can
Well,
read all
and,
this
and
off.
there may be some questions from the planning commission on some of those conditions, and those conditions, we can read them and hopefully make a recommendation on that today. And then if there's a little bit of work prior to city council, I'm sure that can be taken care of. Are there any questions either for the applicant, opposition, or staff? And I know. I think you were done, sir, weren't you? I mean, I think you came to speak in opposition. We were just checking. Oh, I got you. The applicant. Do you need 2 minutes to respond, or are y'all pretty comfortable with at least
I think
documentation that you? It sounds like y'all sort of agreed relative to overall conditions. We can, if there's a motion to accept those, we can read those. Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve with the conditions, knowing that, and on record, we may have one or two that we will work through before we get to final, or actually before Planning and Zoning Committee at City Council, along with Dr. Burrs to confirm.
that's exactly what I was thinking. I'll go over this with them.
Yeah, that was a motion. Got a
be-
motion and a second. I think
Can-
Karen sort of read those. Do you want to put those back up on, or are
They're
we
different.
comfortable?
They're different. I think this, I believe, represents what Mr. Anderson's saying should be the correct conditions. If that's what Planning Commission directs us to do, we'll include these conditions in the resolution that goes to City Council.
Okay, I
based on
think
this
that's
document
good
here.
with the motion, or is that good with the second? Is that,
Sure.
yeah,
On the request to go from R1 to R4, these R4 uses shall be restricted or prohibited. Lodging and boarding houses and bed and breakfast, which I have on the screen, dormitories that did not have, home occupations, companion animal hospitals, pet funeral homes, including companion animal crematory, when used in conjunction with either of these facilities, drug and alcohol, penal or correctional halfway houses, or rehab center and uses similar in character. Special permit for 2-family or multifamily dwellings on lot of record. No tattoo stores. No stores that drive more than 30% of the income from coffee sales. Those are the conditions on the R4. I'm not sure about that last one. On the 30%. Dallas was here somewhere. He may have stepped out.
hey, Brian, Mr. Holland, go ahead if you've got just a quick comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to Mr. Anderson, does that address the questions that you had?
Yes.
Now, those were, you just did the R4s, correct?
That's just
Do you
R4.
want to does anybody want to let him do the C2s and save your questions? There may be some questions on the
Okay,
C2s.
that's the R4,
If you would go through the
which
C2s.
would be for tracks 1 and 2, or 2 and 1 and 2. Yeah,
Right.
this would be the last parcel at the corner. These are prohibited uses, and there's a lot of them. We go through these here. Bowling alleys, billiard rooms, theaters, or other indoor amusement establishments, vehicle repair facilities, washes, new and used dealerships, and repair facilities. Provided the area being used for outside storage of any vehicles must be screened by a side obscuring fence a minimum 8 feet in height. This does not include sales display areas or automobile dealerships. Dwellings, excluding manufactured homes, motels and hotels, mini warehouses not allowed, open air markets, adult-oriented establishments, kennels, animal daycare facility, animal grooming service, and similar uses for small domestic animals, liquor stores, wineries, including vineyards, alcohol distillery, late-night entertainment/event facility or nightclub, alternative financial services, contractor's office, again, the no tattoo stores, and no stores that derive more than 30% of their income from coffee sales.
Okay, let me ask a question to the applicant. So you're aware of all these, and you're comfortable with the, I mean,
I mean, yes. So I'm comfortable with all of them. I think that opens the door on R4 for some of that to come back, and whenever we have a specific use, possibly. But as of now, I'm good with that. I mean, we're targeting a medical office right now anyway.
Okay. So
The final one, it's more about the tenant that's going on there and the 30% derived from coffee. I don't know how you
Well,
do that.
I'm not sure that that's
enforceable. I don't know how you audit it. I don't,
yeah, I'm not sure that's enforceable from an LDO perspective. It may be enforceable from a city, some type of other city type organization. But again, I'm not sure that's a zoning. But I just wanted to make sure that I had you respond to that, because anything that gets approved in a condition that gets approved by city council, you would have to come back through to lift that condition or change that
And
condition.
Mr. Chairman, some
Okay.
of these
Sure.
uses, like the liquor stores and distillery and wineries, I don't know that they can be allowed anyway because of distance requirements in the beer code
Right.
and alcohol code. So it's still good to have them listed, but those I don't think would be allowed
Right.
anyway.
I just know there's a lot of them. Councilman Ledford.
Quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ben, would you just, instead of the income, would you say no coffee-oriented businesses?
Well, it'd be hard to have a business that didn't serve coffee. I don't know how. I mean, you could
Well,
specifically name Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, but
yeah, but there's a lot of great local
Right.
coffee places. I'm just trying to figure out what that would satisfy that without the, I'm trying to find some sort of enforcement tool here.
think it's
You
gonna
know what? I'll stop there. I think we could probably work on that
Okay.
as we move forward to council. So thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bain.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of them, except I do have a question on the R4. You said home occupation. Did I hear that? What does that mean?
If you
I had
wanted,
the same
if you lived there at
question.
the house, if your house was there and you wanted to have your insurance agent or a CPA.
We don't allow that anymore. But
You can do home occupations as long as there's no signage. It looks like a typical home.
yeah.
but where would
No.
that?
But I mean, does it mean if I'm an architect, I can't draw plans in my? I mean,
On this particular site, if it's zoned R4 and you have an existing family home, because these are both vacant. If you had your home there, you wouldn't be allowed to do your architect business. If it's restricted.
But
There
you
was-
could have a professional
You could have your own
office.
professional office. You just
You
couldn't
could
have
have a
people
professional
come in.
architect's office here,
Yeah.
but you just couldn't have.
Yes.
There was a specific reason they wanted it. I don't know what it was.
Okay. Well, hold on. Any other questions from commission for any of the above? Mr. Mabee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to just make one first comment that here again, like in a previous case where Mr. Farmer commented, this is a good example of working with the different parties and the government officials to come to a good compromise. But I do have a question for staff. If his original proposal had come and been R4 on those parcels, do you think it was likely that the staff would have recommended approval, and would they have had conditions on it?
Most likely, yeah, because again, go back to the land use plan. The land use plan said single unit residential. Now, on the corner, last time we recommended approve because that proposed use was assisted living. This would be a huge deviation from that plan. There is no C2 on that side of Bonnie Oaks Drive. That was the things we were looking at during the review.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
And
Mr.
we'd like to
Farmer.
be on record for staff, maybe Councilman Ledford can help with this. The site plan for the applicant will probably need to show some type of use or drawings or buildings or something before it gets to council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hold on a second. Mr. Farmer.
I should probably keep my mouth shut here. We talk about precedent all the time up here. Every month, we talk about precedent. And, one, to have a precedent of a, and I'm going to vote yes because these guys have worked really hard on this, and I'm voting yes. But, to have a condition of sales because we're trying to condition away from, and look, I'm pro-church. I give you my pastor's number, and this is not that. But the list of these conditions to be a neighbor I just find a little difficult. I mean, I can't ever remember a single case with this amount of conditions of what you can't do to get a rezoning on here. And I'm going to vote yes because I think you guys have done a great job, and hopefully you're going to be great neighbors. I think the coffee thing is a little bit silly. I know one of these two guys, and a gentleman's agreement on something like that, I think, is much more fitting in something like this than a zoning condition. But I think we're in the precedent category here with a list of these conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Let me speak from an enforcement perspective, because we have some enforcement perspective from the county. I'm not sure how you enforce a zoning condition on a land use relative to income generated from a business property. So I'm not sure that would hold up, but I'm not an attorney, so I would only echo Mr. Farmer's point. It's a lot of work to get here, and maybe some additional work can be had prior to city council, but I'll entertain any other questions for staff or the applicant or opposition or a motion. We do have a motion, and I lost track. I apologize. So, and Mr. Schultz, I believe you read all of those. So we do have a motion, and I'm assuming you've got your listing. Okay. So any discussion on the motion other than what we just had? Mr. Payne. The motion was the additional. And let me confirm the second. I think Councilman Ledford made the motion. Did Mr. Coker made the second? Okay. Any more discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we are moving to new business on our agenda. And we do, let's see, the first case is 2021-0140. It's located at 1312 East 36th Street. It's to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to R2 residential zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Okay. And there are no conditions. Thank you. Have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And it will go city council. I hadn't been really saying that, but that will go to city council. And I think there's some information about what legislative meeting that will be at. Next case, new business, 2021-0141, located at 6701 Shallowford Road. It's to rezone from R1 residential zone to O1 office zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Did you see the conditions, and are you comfortable with them? Okay. Have a motion to approve with conditions has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case 2021-0142. It's located at 2618 and 2620 Carr Street. It's to rezone from R3 residential zone to UGC urban commercial zone. As a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present?
Let me go check, make sure they're in the room real quick.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. We'll make sure with conditions that everybody's aware. Well, let me ask a quick question. Are y'all aware of the conditions that have been recommended? Pat, are you aware of the conditions? No. Okay. Well, have a seat here. If you would, you have a staff recommendation. There is no opposition present. You have a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Mr. Schultz, if you'll.
Conditions are on the screen. Residential uses only, and building a height limited to maximum 3 stories. Mm-hmm. No. Parking will be included. So it'd be parking.
So sounds like you may have problems with the conditions. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, let's go through this, and then you can come to the mic. Go ahead, Brian, if you'll go through the staff recommendation, then Mr. Newhoff, you'll have some time. I thought we could do that quicker than that. I apologize.
Yeah, me too. This is a request to rezone from R3 to UGC, case number 2021-142. It's approximately 0.74 acres in size. Total, when the thing's developed, be 21 units. That equals a density of 28.3 dwelling units per acre. It's multifamily dwellings. It's located at 2618 Carr Street, 400 feet to the west of Market Street, and about 200 feet to the south of West 26th Street, just across from near Howard High School. This is a view of the site. There are existing apartments on the site. There's about 14 units today on the site. Development will occur behind these two buildings you see on the screen. This is a view south of the site, some single-family dwellings on Carr Street. This is a view west of the site at the corner of Carr and 26th Street, which is a church. This is a view east of the site along Carr Street. That's the parking lot you see to the existing multifamily dwellings on the property. And this is a view north of the site along Market Street, which is the Harris Johnson Park. The site's just behind those trees. Again, it's currently zoned R3. To the north, south, and west is R3. To the east is M3, and the northeast is UGC. Northwest along West 26th Street is UGC. There's been a lot of requests over the years for UGC in this part of the town. This property was declared surplus back in 2007 by the city of Chattanooga. 2604 Long Street, which is to the northwest of the site, was rezoned to UGC in 2007 by a zoning study, which is the South Broad zoning study. The property at the corner of 2601 Market Street was rezoned in 2007 as part of that same zoning study to UGC. Again, this is being used as multifamily. To the north is a church. To the east is a park. South is single-family detached and attached dwellings. To the west is vacant land and single-family detached and attached. And to the north is multifamily. A portion of this property is located in a floodplain, as you can see on the screen. This property is located in the 2018 South Broad District Plan, which recommended parks and open space for this particular piece of property. However, we talked to the Parks and Rec department. They have no plans to purchase this property for the park. But the plan did recommend reconfiguring the edges of Harris Johnson Park so that all sides are fronted by buildings and or streets. Again, this is where we talked to the Parks Department. They are implementing recommendations of the plan, but they have no intentions of purchasing a property to expand Harris Johnson Park. So staff recommend approve with two conditions. The proposal is supported by the plan as it reconfigures the western edge of Harris Johnson so that it's fronted by buildings. It is compatible with adjacent land uses. So staff recommended, again, two conditions: residential uses only, and building height limited to a maximum of 3 stories.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Schultz. Any questions for staff? Hey, Mr. Newhoff, if you'll come up to the microphone and give us your name and address, and then you've got 7 minutes if you need it.
Sure. Pat Newhoff, Newhoff Taylor Architects. This particular location is surrounded in the back by a park, and so it seems as if the height of this, if it were to be 3 stories above the parking, it gives more parking for the use, as well as it's not infringing on any other structures, because that is a park. So if we were to not have the parking underneath, the project could not move forward.
Okay, thank you. And so, and I think the Planning Commission probably understands, the recommendation was 3 stories maximum, and the request was for 3-story structure over a 1-story parking garage.
Yes, and remember, just UGC has a max limit of 4 stories anyway.
Okay, so does that, and that would count even if you got is that not, that's not a height in a distance?
No, it's stories.
It's just stories. So a parking garage, even though it was higher to the beam?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Correct. No.
So, okay. Okay. So questions for staff or a motion? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the UGC with one condition, residential uses only, striking the second recommended condition, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the next two cases, which is item number 4, which is 2021-158, and item number 5, which is 2021-143, go together. One's a rezoning, then the next one is a special permit for a STVR.
Okay. Well, then, we'll have to do them. We'll have to do them one at a time. I'm assuming case 4, 2021-0158, located at 1074 Rockery Way, rezoned from R5 single wide manufacturing home district to A1 agricultural district. Any opposition? Have a motion to approve. Has been properly seconded. Is the applicant present? Okay. So we have a motion to approve from R5 to A1 has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case 2021-143 is the same piece of property located at 1074 Rockery Way. It is a short-term special permit for short-term vacation rental. No, the applicant is present. Is there any opposition? As a staff recommendation to approve. Okay. Have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Hey, case number 6 is 2021-0144, located at 1314 Duncan Avenue. It's to rezone from R3 MD, moderate density zone, to UGC urban general commercial zone. As a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition to this case? Is the applicant present? Are you aware of the conditions? Okay. Let me, if you would, Mr. Schultz, if you could go through the conditions.
Okay. Similar to what we just had a minute ago, this is UGC. 2 conditions are residential uses only and a maximum building height of 2 stories. The 2 stories comes off the applicant's site plan.
Are you comfortable with those conditions? A motion to approve with conditions has been properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? And I missed discussions. Y'all catch me on that. No discussion, I would hope. Okay. Thank you. Item number 7 is case 2021-0145. It's located at 10444 Udawal Georgetown Road. It's to rezone from A1 agricultural district to R1 single family residential district. Has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there opposition present to that case? Yeah. Okay, great. I thought that was the case. Is the applicant present? Yeah, okay. And I think let's there is a request to defer for 30 days. We do have some opposition present. If you would, Mr. Schultz, take us through it, and then I'd like to hear, since they made the trip, opposition, and then we'll let the applicant officially request also. But okay. Mr. Schultz.
Sure, bear with me. This is going to take a little while on this case. 2021-145. This is a request to rezone from A1 agriculture district to R1 single family. Proposed residential development. Total number of acres for this site is 92 acres. There's not a site plan required going from A1 to R1. However, the next case is a PUD, so a site plan is required as part of that. So that's where I'm getting these numbers from. The number of units is 198 units. That equals a density of 2.15 dwelling units per acre. This is located at 10444 Ooltewah Georgetown Road. It's approximately 3 miles to the north of Mahan Gap and Ooltewah Georgetown Road intersection. Here's a view of the site looking from Ooltewah Georgetown. It's the view south of the site along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. This is east along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. The site's just to your right-hand side. This is a view west of the site, showing some of the single-family dwellings on Ooltewah Georgetown Road. Current zoning is A1. If you look at the map, there are no other R1 properties or R1 conventional subdivisions in this general vicinity. It's primarily A1. We do have one little R5 way to the north, just off the screen. If you go to the west, I think it's Highway 58. That is zone C2 and R5. But again, in this general vicinity, there is no R1. There's been no recent zoning history for this site. As I just mentioned, there's no R1 zone property or conventional subdivisions near this site. The closest R1 zone property is approximately 3.5 miles to the west off Birchwood Pike and about 3 miles to the south at 9214 Ooltewah Georgetown Road. Here's just a map showing what that looks like. You can see the site. It's 3.5 miles from that site to, this is a crow flies really, to the R1 on Birchwood Pike. And here's actually it's more like 4.3 miles to the one on Ooltewah Georgetown Road, just showing you in relation to where we are today. Again, this is a vacant piece of property. In this general area, you have vacant land and large tracts of single-family detached dwellings and farms in this general vicinity. There is no land use plan for this property, so we rely on the comp plan, which was adopted in 2016. And that comp plan describes intensity levels, being 1 being the lowest level of intensity development, level 5 being the highest. So the comp plan identified these as being level 1 and level 2. Level 1 has the least potential for development or future public services and facilities. There's a high potential for preserving natural areas through parks, greenways, working farms, and conservation easements. And finally, Area 2, these are sparsely to moderately populated and suggest that these areas are suited for low-intensity development. There's limited infrastructure in this area. We're aware the closest sewer line is approximately 5 miles away to this site. The proposed residential subdivision has a proposal of 190 units, which is very high for this area, as it's very low, intense, single-family, large lot developments in this area. The current zoning designation, which is A1, is more appropriate at this location. The A1 district limits density to a maximum of 2 dwelling units per acre, which is more in keeping with the intensity levels identified in the comp plan, which again was level 1 and level 2. As you might remember, we just recently amended the R1 to allow 6,000 square foot lots on sewer. As with any, and we noted during our staff review, as with any new or amended zoning tool, RPA reviews, in part, the adopted land use policies for guidance to draft a staff recommendation. Well, in this case, there is no land use plan per se, but we follow the comp plan, again, which is on intensity levels. So the countywide comp plan notes this area as having the least potential for development or future public services and facilities. It is more appropriate for low intensity development. The applicant is proposing to develop this property as a PUD with 2 dwelling units per acre. The property can be developed as currently zoned, which is A1, with or without a PUD, under the existing A1 with a density of 2 dwelling units per acre. Again, we stated the sewer is about 5 miles away to this property. The applicant is utilizing a decentralized sewer system that has to be approved by TDEC and ultimately approved and accepted for maintenance and responsibility through WWTA. It's my understanding that's not happened yet. If that was approved, that would open this up, if it's zoned R1, to have the 6,000 square foot lot sizes, which is not in keeping with this area. Approval of this request would introduce the first R1 single-family district along Ooltewah Georgetown Road, north of Mahan Gap. Again, as I stated a minute ago, the closest R1 zone is almost 4 miles to the south. Again, there's no adopted plan for this area, which identifies this area as transitioning away from a more rural community to a more suburban type of development. And finally, the proposal is not compatible with the comp plan, adjacent land uses, and the existing development form, which you're not seeing in this presentation. On the R1, the PUD does introduce townhomes. Townhomes are nowhere in this vicinity. So that's the request in 145. Based on all that information, Staff recommends to deny the R1. Now, we do have a PUD case next, if you'd
Right.
like me to go through that, or just wait.
No,
do
no,
them
no.
one at a time.
Let's wait because this is a rezoning A1 to R1.
Correct.
Any questions for staff? Okay, if the applicant wants to come up, Mr. Price, or if you, okay. He wants to put his 9 minutes towards the end. I know he's already requested for a deferral, but if the opposition would like to come up, there's 9 minutes, and if there's multiple people, that's fine. But if you'd like to come up here, sir. I'll come up to the microphone. Let me ask the question. Defer to the PUD or to this case or to 30
For
days?
this case, for 30 days.
Okay, so are y'all comfortable with it? I mean, they requested it. I know that y'all drove down here. Are y'all also comfortable with a 30-day?
Whatever's the best, be fine.
I have a motion to defer for 30 days. Has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the deferral? Okay, motion is to defer for 30 days. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let me jump ahead just so we're all on the, well, not jump ahead, but the next case is the same property. It is a request for a planned unit development. It has a staff recommendation to defer. I would entertain a motion to defer that case also. Okay, I have a motion to defer case 2021-0146, the planned unit development. Motion to defer for 30 days has been seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Farmer.
I'm going to take advantage of this 30-day deferral and ask you a question that I'm going to ask you next month. I just don't remember staff recommendations in the county from A1 to R1. In my 5 years up here, I can't ever remember a recommendation to denial. So I guess I'm gonna ask ahead of time. You can
respond now, or well, you're right. In the past,
has the staff ever recommended denial on a case that was A1 to R1?
I think we have. Now, we reminded staff, with PC last time when we changed the R1 that we were going to rely more heavily on, and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the land use plans for guidance, because this is a huge change. It was no longer be looking at these automatic approvals. Even beside that, this plan for this general area, there's no R1 nearby. Some people felt that really going from A1 to R1 is the same type zone. There's always been a difference. The A1 restricts you to 2 dwelling units per acre. A1 allows agriculture uses. R1 doesn't. That's sort of how we've always looked at it. But when we changed to 6,000 square foot, in that report, we advised, we're going to take a harder look at these. So that, I don't know if Karen wants to add anything to it, or.
I will. I think the language that we used in the staff report is the same language that was in the staff assessment of the R1 zone, which had been highlighted and underlined and bolded. And that's the same language we used here. Also, just a note, this is, it is removed from the area that's sewered, but because they're using the decentralized sewer system, we have it has the ability to be developed under sewer, and I think it would be only the second system in the county. So that was, it's a little bit of an added complexity. And then third is that we're reviewing this one proposal, and this one proposal has a PUD at 2.1 units an acre, which 2 units an acre is the A1. So there are several factors. But we can, I think when we did the presentation previously on the how often, which showed, right, that most of the R1s got approved in the county. I think we had noted at that time that one, maybe staff had recommended denial of one, but we can double check that.
Yeah, I realize I made it during the PUD because I sat here and thought about it, but my question is not for the PUD. It's strictly from the A1 to R1, and I'd be curious to know that next month. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Did we vote on that yet, or are we waiting to vote?
I think you voted.
We voted. Thank goodness. You sure? Okay. So we deferred both of these cases for 30 days. And staff will have a response, additional response relative to their staff recommendation on A1 to R1. Okay.
We'll pull the statistics and also the reasoning and location for those if there were denials.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. Next case, number 9 on the agenda is 2021 147 2204 Fairmont Pike. It's in Walden. It's the rezone from A1 to E1 estate zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve the request. Did I get a second? Have us properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10 is 2021-0149. It's located at 9232 Amos Road. It's the rezone from A1 Agricultural District to O1 Office District. Has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Or is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Okay. Okay. Have you looked at the conditions, and are you okay with the conditions, or would you like us to go?
We have looked at conditions, and we have some changes that we would like to propose.
Okay, great. Mr. Schultz, if you'll go through the staff recommendation.
You would just go through the conditions or the whole staff?
Just go through the. I think it's appropriate. Go through the conditions, and if we've got some additional questions about the. So the recommendation is to approve, but yeah, why don't you go through these 6 conditions, and then we'll let the applicant speak, and that may cause some questions.
Okay. Type B, 20-foot landscape buffer is required along the western property line abutting the R1, A1 district, and the entire length of the northern property line along Amos Road for non-residential uses. No parking or paving permitted within 40 feet of the western property line where it abuts the A1 agricultural district. No curb cuts on Amos Road for any use other than single-family residence unless required through the permitting process. No dumpster allowed on parcel 132-007. Building height not to exceed 2.5 stories or 35 feet. And finally, number 6, no internally or externally lit signage shall be allowed. And I'll put the site plan.
Okay, great. I was going to ask for that. Thank you.
This site plan, let me clarify real quick. This site plan is for the entire site, including adjacent sites 01. We're only looking at a little sliver of a pie, if you will. So all these conditions only apply to the right-hand side of where my arrow's going, or a little corner.
Okay, well, let me ask a question. Are there some, I'm assuming there's some conditions on the existing O1?
There's not.
Okay.
Conditions.
Okay, great. Any questions for staff? Okay, Mr. Price, if you want to go through, if anything else you need to add along with your comments relative to the conditions.
Thank you, Mike Price, MAP Engineers. So item number 2 states that no parking or paving permitted within 40 feet of the western boundary line where it butts A1. And so what we have is a 30-foot stream buffer. That's that green, darker green with blue line that meanders through there. So given that we have a 30-foot buffer, our parking and asphalt does get closer at some point to that 40-foot through there. So we would like condition number 2 stricken as it relates to that requirement. Just also for staff and for the commission's knowledge, next month there is a case that all the property to the west of this site and to the south, all of that is being requested to be rezoned R3. So not that that's going to be approved, or I don't know how that's going to come out or what staff recommendation is going to be ultimately, but I point that out to simply state that A1 is really not a use that's going to probably end up being the long-term use of that land. It's going to be changing to something else, and given that it's going to be changing to something else, we think that that particular condition on number 2 is maybe a little stringent as far as that goes. We're fine with the rest as far as a type B landscape buffer or equivalent would be the only thing I would then add to number 1. The reason I state that is, again, I have a stream buffer. I also have a WWTA easement
that is on my western boundary line. So that sort of creates a little bit of a incongruency with regards to the requirements of what WWTA has, what the landscape ordinance calls for. So we need a little bit of flexibility as it relates to just stating it has to be a landscape buffer, to change the wording to have some type of equivalency. That would help us as we go through the permitting process. Other than that, we're perfectly fine with all the other conditions.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Price, will you go over the condition 1 again? I was frantically trying to write notes, but I didn't catch all that.
So all that number 1 would be added says a type B 20-foot landscape buffer. After buffer would add in parentheses or equivalent, and then that takes care of number 1. And number 2 is just stricken altogether.
Okay. So number 1, a type B 20-foot landscape buffer.
Or equivalent.
Or equivalent. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
And I think this gets back to the same thing. I don't know, maybe Todd, I don't know if you want to answer or not. How codes enforcement, will they be able to interpret what
I don't know
equivalent means?
I don't know what or equivalent is to a type B. But
Well,
so
just so that everyone is aware, that language is and has been used by the city of Chattanooga in enforcing landscape buffers for 20 years. So it's not, at the end of the day, you know what screening is. I mean, it either screens it or it doesn't. That is what the equivalent language means. And the city of Chattanooga has had no problems in enforcing that through all the years that we've done multiple developments there. So I would think the county can be equally as well at
okay, maybe I'll ask
taking care of
Dallas
that.
when he gets in here. What's the equivalent? Okay. Well, and we can maybe tidy that up prior to a commission meeting. I don't have any problem with discussing that from a standpoint of regulatory. Any other questions and I did ask any opposition. I don't believe there was. Okay. Is there a motion on the case? Have a motion to approve with those changes to the conditions has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 11, 2021-0150, 1024 East Main Street. It's to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to UGC urban general commercial zone. As a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition to the rezoning? Is the applicant present? Okay. Did you have an opportunity to look at the conditions, or are you okay with the conditions? Okay. Have a motion to approve with conditions has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, case 2021-0151. It's located at 1690 Fagan Street and the 1000 block of East 16th Street. It's to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to UGC urban general commercial zone. As a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Same question on the conditions. Have y'all reviewed the conditions? And they're okay? Okay. I have a motion to approve with conditions has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 13 is case 2021-0152, located at 1495 East 14th Street. It's to rezone from R1 residential zone to UGC urban general commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition? I'm assuming you're the applicant, and you may have some issues with the conditions?
Just one condition. Yes, sir.
Okay, let me let staff go through the conditions, and then you'll have an opportunity.
Sure, there's 4 conditions proposed on this, because this is, again, UGC, residential uses only, no more than 4 residential units, building height limited to 35 feet, and rear parking with alley access. The 4 residential units, the applicant requested 5. We're recommending 4 based on the area plan, which supports 2 to 4 units on one lot. So that's where the 4 number of units, restriction on units came from.
So the recommendation is based on, did you say a land?
Yeah, the land use plan, which is the historic River to Ridge plan, which is promotes multifamily housing up to 4 units on one lot. That's why we went with the 4 restriction.
Okay. Is there a site plan that was submitted, or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any, having read the conditions, any questions for staff? Okay. Sir, if you would, name and address.
Yeah, my name is Lee Helena, 1011 Oak Street, Chattanooga. My original application from this site was UGC, was 6 units. And after my initial meeting with staff, changed the application to 5 to appease their concerns. But their recommendation is 4. Staff just stated that the long use plan was 4 for this corridor, but the secondary use of that plan does say a higher density, 6 units to 12. When you look at this site plan, where the word is neighborhood context site plan, that's a 207,000 square foot warehouse with a 2-ton air compressor. I would have a very difficult time building something to sell next to that. So I wanted to do something I could rent. And I was interested in doing 5 one-bedroom units. If you could pull up that site plan that we were at. Commission just recently approved those 2 UGCs directly behind it. That one was approved for 4 units, but those are 4 units, and each unit has 2 bedrooms. So you're going to have like 8 tenants, and I'm asking for 5 one-bedrooms. So I would have 5 units. So the dwelling unit density in an urban context really needs to be defined more by what it's being used for, not just the word unit. So I was just asking for, like I said, originally I wanted to do 6, just like what you just approved. Case 144, it was on the corner of Duncan, I believe. I was just going for 5 instead of their 6.
Okay, thank you, sir. Questions for the applicant or staff? Mr. Mabey.
Is that the only condition that you had
Yeah, that was
concern
it.
with?
That was it. I mean, I had asked for additional, I was going to impose additional restrictions, and I put it on my other site plan, like no change in fence and all that stuff, because I was on the Historic Zoning Commission. But, you know, if they don't really consider that as part of this process. So I was just wanted to try to get 5 units instead of 4.
Thank you.
Mr. Anybody else have a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to approve the applicant's request with all the conditions listed on the staff's recommendation, with the exception of it change from 4 to 5 units.
Okay. I have a motion to approve with the change, with 4 conditions, with the change from 4 to 5 units on condition number 2 has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Item number 14. Case number 2021-0153, located at 1035 Sunset Drive. It's a special permit for short-term vacation rental. As a staff recommendation to approve, is there any opposition? I have a motion to approve, has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Case number 2021-0154, located at 2603 Williams Street. It's request to rezone from R3 residential zone to UGC urban general commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Have you reviewed the conditions? Are you good with the conditions? Okay. Mr. Schultz, if you can take us through these conditions and maybe a site plan for this.
Okay. Yeah, these are three conditions. UGC request, residential and institutional uses only, maximum building height of 3 stories, and third condition, which I believe the applicant wishes to lift, is a 6-foot tall side obscuring fence along the southern property line. Here's the site plan. That southern property line is just to the south here. Go back to the picture of where staff came from on that condition. I don't know if I can get a good view. This orange car is. This is where staff is talking about a fence to protect. There's a proposed alley or rear access going in on this site, and staff thought of the condition to put a fence along this property line to protect this single-family home from the cars from entrance into that site.
So the condition was the condition because of a UGC next to an R1, or was it
UGC requires a 10-foot landscape buffer.
Okay.
And we also put a fence in too because of just that home is close proximity.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
Quick one.
Mr. Farmer.
I'm just super curious, Brian. The last case, so we've had a bunch of these UGCs, and every one before you've had 3 stories, and the last one you had a height requirement. How do you determine why is one way and why is the other way?
The one we just talked about. Our residential specifically mentioned the height. That's why we went with that instead of a story. But yeah, we normally do the height, either 2 stories or 4 stories. But you're right. With that time, we did 35. I believe the place type describes a specific height requirement.
Yep.
So in this case, the applicant wishes to talk about
Oh yeah,
the landscape.
If you could, come on up. And you've got 7, I guess 9 if you need it, but go whatever you need to add or.
Great. Alan Jones with Ace Engineering, 714 Cherry Street. We're fine with conditions 1 and 2. On condition 3, the property that's in reference just to the south of us is actually 2 duplexes. If you actually, I don't know if you have a plan view, Brian, or aerial view, either one. But the property to the south of us is actually it's zoned R3, and there's 2 structures on that property, and they're both duplexes. So there's actually 4 units to the south of us. So from a density standpoint, it's a similar density, and so we're asking just for that screen fence to be removed. Also, that entire block between Williams and Cowart, I think 95% of that property is owned by one developer. And it's going to be moving into the UGC eventually. Everything else in this area has been moving to UGC. Eric, who's my client, has been already in discussions with that developer. And there's nothing's concrete yet, but they're looking at doing a central kind of alleyway down the middle of that block, about where that red dot is. And then using the driveway of our proposed site as connection to that internal alleyway to help build out this urban context, which I think is useful. So really, I think a fence screen kind of defeats the purpose of creating an urban environment. It kind of blocks everybody in. It doesn't really, I don't think it's creating the neighborhoods that we're wanting to create here in Chattanooga. And then on the landscape buffer, Brian did mention that. I had some discussions with both RPA and LDO this morning. It's true, the UGC has a 10-foot landscape buffer against residential zones, which is the way it reads. The landscape ordinance has a clause that if the adjacent use is equal or less than, there is no landscape buffer required. And then if you read further down in the landscape ordinance, it basically states that if there's one conflict over the other, the landscape ordinance presides. But RPA and the city said that the zone or the buffer from UGC actually does preside over the landscape buffer. So we have a 10-foot buffer that we're probably going to have to go to BOZA to, I guess, because I think there's a conflict of interest in those 2 zones or those 2 ordinances. I was told that the Planning Commission cannot add or cannot decrease. Karen, you may want to help me phrase your email.
Yeah, you
But
can't add a condition that would decreases the standard.
You can't decrease the standard.
Decrease the standard.
But you can increase the standard. So I guess.
If you wanted to, if the landscape conditions were 10 foot, planning commission could add a condition that would be 20 foot. You can't go from 10
Can't
to
go
0.
10 to 0. So that would be a board of zoning. Not that we can hash this out today, but it may be worth looking at what, the city is, right now UGC has been that default urban infill zone for toolbox because there's really no other residential zone that we can do good urban infill with. So UGC, I think it's clear on today's docket, there's multiple residential that's going UGC. Really, we need like an urban general residential zone so some of those buffers can be addressed. But since you guys can't apparently lessen that landscape buffer, we'll have to go to Board of Zoning Appeals after this.
Thank you.
That's it.
So we don't talk anything about the landscaping zone. Again, we just talk about the side obscuring fence, correct?
Correct.
From a condition.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's I assume the applicant's only issue. Any questions for staff or the applicant?
Whoever installs it. Supposed to. Pretty side facing out. That's right.
Any other questions? I thought it was a helpful comment about sort of bringing neighbors together instead of separating by fences. I thought that was a really good argument. I don't know what staff looked at in this, and I'm not in the weeds on it, but that was an interesting comment. I do understand, I think, a little bit from a staff perspective. Is that a connection all the way through? Is that driveway connected all the way through the block?
So our driveway does connect Cowart to Williams.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm assuming one way.
It'll be two-way.
Two-way. Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the applicant's request with conditions 1 and 2 and strike condition 3.
Okay. Have a motion to approve the condition striking one condition for a 6-foot side obscuring fence. Have a motion has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank
Commissioner.
you. Stay close. Next case is a mandatory referral, 2021-0155, 2600 block of Williams Street. I'm assuming the same property, mandatory referral, right-of-way abandonment has a staff recommendation to approve. I'm assuming there's no opposition. Staff recommendation to approve. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. Has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? And that goes through, I guess, the appropriate process through city engineering. Last case under new business is case number or item number 17, case 2021-0157, 5513 Dodds Avenue. Is to rezone a portion of that from R2 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Any opposition? Have a motion to approve has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm
I
sorry.
was trying to get your attention.
I'm sorry.
I know,
Councilman
you were
Ledford.
moving. I just wanted to add in that I did speak with Councilwoman Coonrod on this particular case, and she was in full favor and aware of this particular case.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Councilman. We need rings that we can tap on the glass, so or our lights to work. But I don't even know how to work those. So anyway, thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. Moving on to amendments and resolutions, we have two. The first is a resolution to amend the Helms County subdivision regulations, Article 4, subdivision design standards, Section 408, water facilities, Section 408.3, fire hydrants. Mr. Schultz.
Correct. Yes, we're proposing to amend this. This was mentioned last month. Right now, on the sub-regs, which is on your screen, the area in red says the fire hydrants shall be located no more than 1,000 feet apart as measured along the street of any structure. Well, there's various fire departments, volunteer fire departments in the county who've adopted various versions of the International Fire Code that conflict with this provision. So we're recommending to take that out and just state that you have to talk to the fire authority having jurisdiction over the property where the property is located in terms of fire hydrant spacing. So we're recommending taking that out of the subregs. And finally, number C talks about the type of fire hydrant that shall be installed in the subregs. There's no need for that to be in the subregs. So we're recommending to take that out as well.
And let me only ask a question, Brian. I'm assuming most well, I'm almost sure the fire code, and I'm assuming some of the fire authorities having jurisdiction that they are actually more restrictive than this.
Correct. And what's happening, people are referencing the subregs on the spacing within the fire marshals coming out and saying, you're 500 feet apart, not 1,000 feet apart. So which do you go with? So we're just clarifying that, it shouldn't be in the subregs. You should rely on the fire code.
You go with the jurisdictional fire
Jurisdiction
authority. So questions or comments on the change? So we do need a motion, correct? Okay. Have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Have a motion and a second to amend the subdivision regulations has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next is a resolution to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38, Zoning Ordinance, Article 6, Height and Other Special Exceptions, Division 1, Height and Area Exceptions, Section 38 through 502, Lots of Record, 3 single-family dwellings, and Section 38504, Projections over Yard. Mr. Schultz.
Correct. And we have Dallas here, Dallas Rucker, with any questions. But basically, in Section 38502 and 504, there's different provisions on side yard setbacks. Section 38502 3B is talking about lots of record. Basically, the highlight in red is that if your lot of record, which typically has a 5-foot side setback, nothing shall be permitted within that 5-foot setback, including heating and air conditioning units. Well, if you go to the next section, which is 38504, is talking about side setbacks in general for any residential lot. This section allows heating and air conditioning equipment to project in the required side yard, but not over 5 feet. So this is clarifying this language. It wasn't really a problem until about 5 or 6 years ago when the side setback in the R1 was changed. The R1 side setback used to be 10 foot. That was changed to 5 foot. So it matches the lot of record. These two conflict. So Dallas would like for these to be clear. So we're making them the same provisions that you can have projections in the side yard for heating and air units for lots of record and regular lots. And Dallas is here. If I didn't do a good job explaining that, you can answer questions.
So it's just making the lots of record and the regular 5-foot setbacks
Match.
consistent.
Yeah, but now there's conflicts.
And you're good with it? I'm assuming you may have recommended it. Councilman Ledford.
We're in alignment with Dallas now. Fantastic. Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Has been properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Those were really hard to read, all those sections.
Oh, I know.
I would update their section codes and section numbers. But,
Hey, we're going through a zoning
I'm
code
just-
assessment that will
I'm
hopefully
just talking.
clarify that.
Staff. We'll move on to staff updates. I believe the staff have some information related to land disturbance, site disturbance permits, and preliminary plats.
Yes, we have Dallas here for that as well. Remember last month,
And Mr. Price, I think you brought this up, so I just want to make sure you're aware. I don't see Mr. Blackmore here. But
And just Mr. Price did bring it up, and we did share a presentation with him, the presentation with him on Friday at his request, just so if he had any comment, just since he had brought it to our attention.
And let me just make sure, what staff did is go back to staff, jurisdictional staff, to come up with some information that you're going to now provide to the Planning Commission. And then really what you're looking for from the Planning Commission is direction moving forward based on these comments.
If there's an issue, not an issue or not.
Okay.
We're just here to present information to you guys from all sides. We state something that this is in the subregs.
Well, let me only say, what I'll try to do, Mr. Price, is do the same as we have before, try to do a 7 to 9 minute, which would allow you, after staff, to have some input. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this
sorry.
is really talking about land disturbing permits and the timing of that permit tied to a plat. Yes, it's in the subregs, and yes, we at RPA are responsible for the platting and subregs, but this is really more of a land disturbing LDO concern. Same thing with the engineering side in the county. It's more of their concern. So we try to put all this together and present this information. But we were asked last month, there's a potential issue of a timing staging between the submittal and approval of a land disturbance permit through LDO or the county and approval of a preliminary plat. In the Chattanooga subregs, currently it states, after preliminary plat approval, the applicant submits construction engineering plans to the Land Development Office for review, comment, and approval. After those plans are approved, the developer can then move forward with getting a land disturbance permit and clearing and grading the land and getting it ready for infrastructure improvements. County subregs stated a little bit differently, but in essence, it's the same thing. Preliminary plat approval by the Planning Commission does not constitute permission to begin any infrastructure improvements. After preliminary plat approval and after consultation with a governmental engineer, the developer may start construction on streets and other improvements. So this reminds you of the steps in the development review process. You start typically with a preliminary plat, which is required through state law. Has a staff and planning commission review. The review consists of conformity with development regulations in terms of zoning and subdivision regulations. We hold a public hearing, provides public transparency through a public hearing process on proposed developments. And then once that plat's approved, you then move forward with submitting your construction plans or civil plans for grading and clearing of the site, which falls in the second bullet, which is construction plans. Those are detailed engineering plans that are submitted for land disturbing permit in terms of grading and clearing, management of erosion control, and how you're going to construct improvements on the site in terms of roads, utilities, and stormwater management. And finally, once all that's in place and constructed and developed and inspected and ready to be accepted by the city or the county, you can then move forward with a final plat, which is again required by state law. Planning Commission gave the authority to that to staff. So staff approves final plats. They don't come from the Planning Commission any longer unless you need a variance. Once those plats are recorded, you then can start selling lots. And then you start obtaining building permits. That moves you pretty quickly through the development process. Again, municipal and regional planning commissions are empowered through state law to adopt subregs, in which I have those on the screen. They're different sections of state law, but they're all basically the same, depending if you're a city planning commission, or if you're a county planning commission, or if you're regional, which we're regional. So that spells out what you can do through your subregs. What's the purpose of subregs? It's to ensure that adequate and efficient transportation, water, wastewater, and other public facilities are available to serve the new development. It also ensures that the shape, size complies with zoning regulations. It coordinates growth with planned growth in terms of infrastructure. It protects life and property from fire, flood, and other danger. It also encourages the proper arrangement of roads in relation to existing or planned roads. That's really the purpose of subregs, which is basically spelled out in state law. It's also spelled out in our subregs, introductory statements. So preliminary plats, who submits those? Those are submitted by registered land surveyors. It's a drawing that shows general streets, blocks, your lots, your lot sizes, your lot frontages, drainage improvements, or any other improvements that are shown. Again, the purpose of a plat is to serve as a guide for the preparation of your engineering plans or your civil plans. Also serves as a guide for final plat. And again, the plat review process is an integral part of responsible development. Who approves the plats? That's the Planning Commission. You guys approve the plats through a public hearing process. A plat can be denied if the plat does not comply with the standards, or approval of the plat would be detrimental to the public health, public safety, or general welfare. So they have been denied in the past. Construction civil plans. These are different. These are submitted by a registered engineer. They don't come before the Planning Commission. The purpose of the civil engineering plans is to provide sufficient engineering detail to ensure that the subdivision, including grading and the construction of all improvements, is in conformance with the approved preliminary plat, and the subdivision regulations meets the design standards of the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County. Who approves civil plans? It's the Land Development Office. In the county, they don't have a Land Development Office. It's different departments through WWTA and Hamilton County Engineering. But the Planning Commission is not involved in construction plans. Through this review, there's no public hearing involved. There's no signs posted on the site that the property is being cleared or graded. No public notices are placed on the property. Approval of the civil plans allows the issuance of a permit to begin excavation, clearing, and infrastructure improvements on a site. One thing that has changed over the years is vested rights, which is adopted through state law in 13.3.413. Planning commissions, again, have the power to adopt subdivision and zoning regulations. Zoning regulations ultimately go on to city council, but it comes from the planning commission first for review. Things such as PUDs, overlay districts, residential dwellings, we have the power to adopt standards on those. So state law was amended to allow this thing called vested rights, and it spelled out what things are considered vested under state law. Preliminary and final plats, MXU development plan, R1 open space, residential or institutional PUDs, special permits approved by Planning Commission, and special permits approved by City Council and BZA. That's in our zoning code. We put that in our zoning regulations. When those things are approved by a public body, that vests your rights for, I think it's 3 years, and ultimately can be extended up to 2 years, making it a total of 5 years vested. So basically that means any rule or regulation that was in place at the time of the adoption of any of these bulleted items on the screen, the developer has vested rights. So that's changed a lot of things and how we do things in Hamilton County and across the state. We also looked at peer review, or just to compare our processes versus other processes. And we looked at in Tennessee, Williamson County, preliminary plats must be approved by the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of a land disturbing permit. Murfreesboro, the same thing. Gain authorization from the Planning Commission to proceed with preparation of construction plans and final plats. You have to have a preliminary plat approved by the Planning Commission. Rutherford County, Tennessee, same thing. Such construction plans shall conform to the preliminary plan as approved by the Planning Commission. Knox County, a design plan, which is in essence our preliminary plat, concept plan. A design plan, which is similar to the civil plans, shall not be approved until it is determined that the plan is in accordance or compliance with the approved concept plan, which is our preliminary plat, including all conditions of the concept plan approval that must be met prior to design plan approval and must be approved by the Planning Commission. Now, Knoxville, Tennessee is a little different. They have approved the issuance of land disturbing permits prior to approval of a concept plat. They've had problems with that, and I highlighted on the screen, these are direct comments from their Knoxville director. When they've done that in the past, when they've issued land disturbing permits without a plat, that's caused a lot of calls from the community, a lot of calls to elected officials. How did you let them start work without an approved project? So it's a lot of education. So they do it a little different, but again, they've had some issues and concerns. Johnson City, within 6 months of receiving preliminary plat approval, the subdivider shall submit 5 sets of construction plans. So this is basically saying after plat approval, you then can move forward with your construction plans. Subdivision review process. This is just a quick little overview of our subdivision process. Our plats are submitted to us, RPA, on the third Monday of each month. Then, the second Wednesday after the submittal, plats are reviewed by staff. And then the third Wednesday after that, submittal date, staff and the development community, including surveyors and developers, meet and go over the plat. And then 2 Fridays after that, the corrections are submitted for staff. And then we have a week, about 5 business days to review it to make sure all the corrections are made. And if they've been made and it's acceptable, we add that plat to the agenda. And then 8 days later, it gets added to the Planning Commission meeting for review. So in total, from submittal of the plat to Planning Commission, it's 35 business days for review process. So we looked at this from the county perspective and the city perspective. So challenges with changes to the process in the county. The preliminary plat review process is the only process for tracking and verifying all departments, being that WWTA, Emergency Management, Engineering and Water Quality, have approved a subdivision for development and to begin construction. Preliminary plat review includes detailed engineering plans submitted as part of a review process for a preliminary plat. Preliminary plat review and planning commission hearing provides transparency through the public hearing process, provides opportunity for the public to convey comments on potential negative impacts on public health, safety of the proposed development. Public education. Why was the property granted a permit to start grading and clearing of the development site when the project hasn't even been approved by the planning commission? Cost to elected officials will come up. It's a financial risk. We often hear it's a financial risk to the developer, but also a risk to the community, being the county. It's also a risk to them. And again, the vested rights could cause an issue as well. So that's challenges with the process to the county. Challenges with changes to the process in the city of Chattanooga. Staffing levels and attention to enforcement and high workload. These have bullets under each one of these 5 topics. So staffing levels, increased attention during city budget hearings on LDO enforcement, i.e. the vegetative standards. LDO is understaffed and trying to reduce repetitive or redundant reviews. Increased call load from public/elected officials when grading and clearing happens too early in the process. Item number 2, LDO prioritizes projects. They place the emphasis on moving projects forwards that have been through the needed required approvals, i.e. the planning commission approval of plats. Number 3, land disturbance permit is a holistic site development process. It addresses other items that require lot lines to be shown, including setbacks and structure placement. It's used to supplement zoning condition enforcement. Number 4, stormwater stay-on volume. Once graded or filled, this creates a difficult situation to comply with stormwater regulations if change is needed, or it may create a self-imposed hardship that would prevent project permit approval altogether. And finally, number 5, change could negatively impact public perception of public hearing of subdivision plats at Planning Commission. So those are just some of the challenges, again, to the changing the county process and changes to the city process. So that's all I have in terms of the timing of the land disturbing permit and plating approval. So I'll try to answer any questions. Again, we have Dallas here to answer any questions you may have on the city side.
So any questions for, I guess, that presentation that RPA went through?
I know it's a lot. And basically, if Dallas has any questions, or Mike.
And Mr. Price, who obviously is part of the development community that brought it up last planning commission meeting, maybe we want to hear before, and that may create some questions. But does anybody have any Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Dallas, we've talked a lot last couple of years, especially at council, about enforcement of laws that we already have on the books that council obviously has a concern for. I noticed that the steep slopes vegetation component is listed in here, one that I work very hard on. And so is it a staffing issue for enforcement? I know we kind of go around and round with the same questions at council, but I wanted this body also to hear some of the hurdles that you're facing in your office. And we always ask for what we can do to try and help. So
yes, sir. We currently only have one reviewer on the stormwater side of things. A matter of fact, Jeremy was going to come with me today, but he's doing interviews for a position that's already there that we haven't had in quite some time. HR and stuff like that. It's been hard to get that done. And I think, one day I would ultimately, if we had a third person, I think that would be somebody could work through the development process while it was going on, and so we could have a quick review. Our stormwater land disturbing activity permit is really, as said, is turned into a site development permit. With other people signing off, just to make sure we don't get too far into the development before, emergency services, transportation. If we have any road problems, there's no need to pre-grade a road that can't be where it is. Stormwater structures, we also have the vegetative standards. And by the way, we are trying to figure out how we can start that. So, but we're an inspector short too from regular staff numbers. It's you can do what what you need to do as the planning commission, but we're still going to prioritize work, everything that is approved, so we don't have have additional reviews that have to take place until we get where we can spend lots of time dealing with hypotheticals. And we are committed to looking at, re-looking at all our services and the way we do things, and a commitment from the mayor's office to help us through the procedures and really identify where we do have real holdups and make sure we can identify those. So, yes, we do have those. I think there were 65 stormwater reviews behind when I left the office at 12 to come up this way.
So I appreciate you mentioning Kelly administration stepping in and willing to help, because in our interviews as they were transitioning into office, a lot of us were in conversations with that on that particular subject, and I think it's very important when we overburden or ask too much of what our resources are. So I'm glad you stated that, and as we talk through council, I want you to know that the council, from what I've heard through my committee to you all, is that we're willing to help you and be there for you and get the resources. And I hope that rings through clear for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it does, but I think it's great that we do a deep dive.
Sure.
And there is some. Don't just throw people at it. Let's make sure we're throwing the right people in the right place. And I don't think we need that much, but I see the same holdup all the time, and that's been there for a little while. So
Continue to let us know on the council
Yes, sir.
level what you need from us through obviously our public works chairman, and we're there to help you help us. So,
yes, sir.
thank you, Chairman.
Let me only say one thing from a county perspective, because I'm probably the only one here, although I could probably call in some RPA people to help me, and I probably need some help. But let me state this. Anytime a project started, you have, without a thorough review of all the jurisdictional agencies and making sure that all the appropriate engineering has been done that meets the regulations, anytime a project started that way, there's a potential that there are issues. And not just potential for issues, it also causes an extreme, in certain situations, additional work required by jurisdictional staff that should be doing something else because they are getting a community outcry on a project that hasn't gone through an appropriate process. And so what the subdivision regs currently as written allow us is to do all of those jurisdictional reviews collectively. Everybody sees the same thing. It requires the development community to make sure that everything's engineered appropriately so the water quality matches with the stormwater on the subdivision regulations, that the road conforms to the subdivision regulations, but also to the jurisdictional fire authority. And so what it allows is that coordination, make sure that it's all been reviewed, that it's been engineered appropriately. It gives a public process for that approval through the Planning Commission. And it alleviates, it doesn't alleviate everything because these are very complicated projects in a lot of sense. It doesn't alleviate all issues and liability, but it does allow everybody to see it and everybody to understand what's going on, and then that public process. And from Brian's slide, if everything's submitted appropriately and understanding that there are different pressures for different types of projects, and there can be deadlines that have been met that are missed, we're basically talking about 8 days if everything's done appropriately. And so I would only offer that. I'm in full support of keeping it the current way, but I know Mr. Price has some comments to that. Thank you.
Yeah, my first comment is it's not 8 days, but let me start from the beginning. When the original subdivision regs were written, and when I first started working on this 25 years ago, so that's one thing about age. You've been around long enough, you can see what the changes are. Preliminary plats were prepared by surveyors, and they submitted them. They didn't even submit any engineering documents. They gave a road profile, they gave a plat, and that was it. Didn't show sewers, didn't show health department, didn't show storm drainage, didn't do stormwater calculations, none of that. And that's what these regs started with. So The process then is once the preliminary plat was approved, or at the same time, the engineer then started his process of preparing construction documents. Well, that's not the way the process now is unfolding what we're being required to do. So a preliminary plat has to be submitted and approved, okay? So how does the process now work? Well, now we have to do full set of construction documents. So now we reverse the order, which takes far more time than what it did 25 years ago when we started this whole process and what these rules were written to do. So this doesn't have anything to do with the presentation here missed the mark in what I asked, because this doesn't have anything to do with staffing issues. We still have to do the same engineering that we have to do for the entire process on getting our approvals. This doesn't have anything to do with public process and the ability for public to gripe. If that was the case, nobody would have called about the entrance on Snow Hill Road, because it went through the whole process and y'all approved it all the way through the final plat. You still got phone calls. You're going to get phone calls irregardless whether the Planning Commission approves or doesn't approve. So this doesn't vet any of that either for the public process. Here's what I'm telling you is what we're running into. If I submit to the city, it's a one-step process, and the city goes through and they hear fire, storm, water, transportation, the whole gamut. And if they have looked through all that and approved it, I should be able to start construction. The only thing that's left is then when I get finished with all my drawings, now because of the way the process is set up, I have to give that to the surveyor. If the surveyor gets it and misses that date, it's not 8 days, it's 30 days. It's 30 days that we're now held up. And sometimes that makes a really big difference in the process of trying to get your project underway. Well, if I've got all of my engineering 100% approved through LDO, the Land Development Office, every department has looked at it that could possibly look at it. The only thing that's left is sort of the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, which is the plat. That's all that's left. Why can't we get underway under construction? Give us a variance to sign if we need to take on the responsibility. This doesn't put the city at risk. It doesn't put the county at risk either. I'll deal with that one in a second because the process is a little bit different. All I'm saying is I have seen time and time again where this is holding us up, being able to get through the process. And it doesn't need to hold us up if I've got all the approvals from all the departments, and the only thing that's left at that point is getting a preliminary plat through Planning Commission. That's the issue. It's holding up the process of getting under construction. The county is a little bit different. What I run into at the county is I submit to different departments, and some departments I have to call multiple times to say, am I good? And Todd, if you want to talk about this afterwards, I'll be happy to do this. This is not throwing the county under the bus. I'm just saying the way the process works. There's some departments that we will submit plans. We don't get anything written back. We call, and finally someone will say, you're good to go. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. But we still get all the approvals, TDEC, transportation, the fire marshal, erosion control, stormwater, it's all done. If I've got all those done, the public should have again, confidence that if all those departments have approved it, we should be able to start construction. The plat is simply nothing more than the documents taken from all the engineering documents and say, this is the final document that will be recorded in a format that really helps people understand what this lot is, size, dimensions, and things such as that. We're being held up, is what I'm telling you. There needs to be one mechanism. A simple solution is let us have the developer sign a variance form that lets them move forward. It's their risk. It's not a risk on the county. It's not a risk on the city. But the process is holding us up. I'm seeing it time and time again on these developments. So I'm asking that there be some mechanism that lets us do that. Happy for any questions.
Questions? Nothing?
Mike?
Thank you. I've got a few things maybe.
I'm sorry.
No, I won't. Please.
My question's real quick, and it doesn't have to be answered here, but would you translate this hurdle as an increased cost on producing housing? In essence, what impact would you see, and this is rhetorical, you can answer me offline another time, what impact could you see happening if it were changed, streamlined, so to speak, to get things moving quicker? How would that affect if I were to go to my constituents or any of my colleagues go to their constituents and talk about the affordability issue of housing? How does that translate? Because a lot of times what I hear is the process to getting the shovels to the dirt is a major hurdle and a cost and a time frame for building housing. That's my general statement question. So just take that and you can answer me at another time.
Understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
More questions? Well, I'll probably save some of mine for offline or collect. Well, I mean, let me say this, and Mike's. I mean, I'll take some of what Mike said, but I think we're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, missing deadlines or. And I would only disagree that the plat's actually a very important part of the process. Not that the engineering isn't just as important, but actually what the plat says and what the plat looks like is a very important part of the process. And so if the engineering's being done and the plat's not being done concurrently with that, then I think there's issues. The only other thing I will mention relative to starting before preliminary plat process, then why do you have a preliminary plat process? If all the approvals are done, all the engineering's right, it meets all the requirements, then what's the intent of the preliminary plat process? Because I will tell you that there are situations, and I would only disagree on this front, that if there is a development that starts and we have very competent developers and very competent engineers, and I would say it's the few exceptions, but there are plenty of projects that end up being a developer engineer liability that also end up being a public liability. We have projects that have started that can't get approvals or didn't get appropriate approvals that we either end up dealing with issues to where we've got to somehow remedy as a public entity, or we end up with legal issues. And so I would say those are very, very few, but that's why we have processes in place. The processes in place are not for the perfect projects where everybody does everything correctly. The processes are in place to make sure there is a step process that makes sure that all of the entities that have responsibility meet those responsibilities. And my only point is, if you start all these projects without preliminary plat approval, then I'm not sure what the debate can be about a public health, safety, welfare issue at Planning Commission where somebody maybe makes that claim or provides that amount of evidence if you're 3/4 of the way through or 1/4 of the way through or a week started in mass grading on a construction project. So I would say the 8 days, in my opinion, is if everybody does what they're supposed to do. I mean, I would agree if a surveyor misses a submittal while those two processes are running concurrently, that affects your construction plans, that affects the developer's start. But and the only other thing relative to a county perspective, and I'll say this, I don't control when the wastewater authority does their reviews and approvals, but I think RPA started a really good process that I think was a little bit difficult. I think I fought for a pre-submittal. I maybe wasn't here the first week, and then we got it passed. I think it's been helpful. What it's done is it's got all of our jurisdictional authorities certain entities I have no control over from a jurisdictional authority in the room to make sure everybody's on the same page and we're talking about major developments that actually produce public infrastructure that we're all responsible for as public citizens and public taxpayers. It's created that process to where everybody understands their responsibility. what they're required to do. It ties in the plat, which is a very important document, and it ties in approval from this planning commission, which I would say is a very important part of the process. So that's why I think you would see staff wanting to stick to the current process. So we've got all the jurisdictional controls, which includes this body, as part of that development process. And so that's my statement, Mr. Payne.
The only thing I think we should, and I agree with what you're saying, but I do think we should always be open to improving process, whatever that looks like, And the one thing I would say that I guess I don't understand, you said that we have these problems, and if we were following this process, how are we having these problems?
I would only argue that the county hasn't been consistent in these processes. We've only been consistent in these processes probably for the last 6 to 8 to 12 to 24 months. I don't know. The RPA can. We have not been consistent in this process, and I think that's been from a county perspective, our biggest issue with an expectation.
And I will say the pre-submittal meeting that established in the county has helped tremendously.
And we did that about 18 months
18
ago.
months ago. Came to the planning commission.
Maybe 24. We did it pre-COVID. It was the spring before COVID. So it's been 2.5. We've been doing that 2.5 years, and that's what's gotten us from a county perspective. It's got all of our jurisdictional authorities, I think, in the room. Again, Mr. Price may be right. There may be some people that have missed here and there. We've tried as much as we could to do that. The RPA has done a tremendous job of coordinating that, and so for the last 2.5 years, I would say that we've been better at reviewing collectively from jurisdictional authorities, which includes the Wastewater Authority building inspection that does FEMA and other stuff. The fire chiefs, we've done a much better job for the last 24, 28 months.
And I would agree with all that. But again, the issue comes down to so oftentimes the development is being held up to get to this body. And while I understand the plat process is important, I'm not minimizing that. I'm not arguing that at all. But if all of the approvals had been garnered prior to that, being held up from beginning construction is not the right move. That holds up construction. That costs time. That costs money. And I'm seeing that on a consistent basis. That's reality.
Mr. Farmer.
This may be a dumb question, but so I've listened to everything kind of carefully everybody said, and I go through this process more often not in the city of Chattanooga or Hamilton County, but in other jurisdictions. And so would it help at all? And because I'm looking at Brian's timeline, and I guess the thing that comes to me is and this is only for the county, I guess. So if I'm submitting to the county, it has to.
Dallas is here too, though. So if you would, please spread it.
Give him some love. Instead of everything have to be all in and completed at once, could you submit just the plat portion to the county for review earlier in the process?
You can, but here's what you need to understand. The surveyor cannot submit his plat till he's got all of my documents completed.
I guess what I'm saying would be something different from that you could submit the plat portion for review, because would that help your timeline?
What would really help the timeline is that if the requirements for the preliminary plat were loosened up, if you will. So in other words, if it said,
I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah, if we're going to show that we're going to do a development that's got 45 lots and it's going to have 1,000 feet of road, and here's approximately where the pond and community lots, like it used to be, and all you gave is a road profile and you're done, then yes, if we went back to that sort of mechanism, which was what originally we were done in the very beginning, then the plat can run through, get approved, and then the engineering documents can follow behind, which is the way it used to do. Then the final plat covers all of the issues that have to be addressed at that point in time. All the easements, all the information that typically is required, you could do it at that point. But that's not the way it's working now.
Mr. Chairman, I'll say something too. One of the things we heard from LDO too is that without that plat, if there's conditions on a landscape buffer being shown and they go out and clear there's a condition, LDO has no way of knowing if that buffer should have stayed or not. Once it's cleared, it's too late. It's gone. And I beg to differ. I do think this presentation hit the point. It was asked, to look at this staging. We're saying keep the staging as is. So I think it hit the point of what you was asking.
But if I have a plan that is approved, including landscaping, which is looked at it's on the plans. So if they cleared the buffer, they went against the engineering plans. The plat had nothing to do with that.
I would only think two things, that we're diminishing the importance of a plat and how a major subdivision plat with public infrastructure has to meet all the engineering design. And I think we talk about everything approved. The Planning Commission hasn't made an approval, my only point would be, I understand the time implications. I would only say that if everything's submitted when it's required to be submitted, the engineering can start a little bit earlier, but everything has to correspond to that engineering plan approval that meets all the jurisdictional authorities and the submittal of the preliminary plat, which conforms to all of that design requirements related to pond easements, drainage easements, pond areas, permanent stormwater controls. My only point is it's very important that the plat and the engineering plans match. The meet. So if you do one ahead of the other, I think you create, not in every situation, I think it's the exception, because I think we've probably proven that, but you create additional issues relative to regulatory authority. That's my personal opinion. And you disconnect the importance of Planning Commission approval through a public process.
I do have I do recall we used to do it this way. What I can remember, we do a preliminary plat is where you worked out the public process. It's not trying to shirk anything. It's where the public had their crack at, here's what your lots look like. Here's how the size looks like. Here's where the pond goes. And you had at least my understanding, if you do it that way, which is how we used to do it, then to do the engineering, you're working towards something that's already an approved target. What I have seen sometimes is you go through all this, you get the engineering done, and all of a sudden we come up here and we change something. Now you've gone through expensive engineering and platting and for something we may not even approve. So I don't know what the process, I don't really know why we got away from this. I don't know why you wouldn't submit a preliminary plat that had all the information that's relative, pertinent to the public. And at that point, when we get that approved, then the engineers have to take into account what you're talking about, because when it comes to us for final approval, we won't give it without it. That's used to be how it worked.
And I think that's what we're saying. We're saying keep that the same. You do a preliminary plat, come for this body for review and approval with engineering stuff submitted as part of that.
That's not what it was. See, that's the difference. We submitted a preliminary plat without the engineering because you did it without the engineering because you didn't know what you were engineering to. What if you bring the preliminary plat, you have the engineering, and we?
Well, I think the engineering makes sure that the expectation that there's not a public health, safety, or welfare issue. I would only argue that it's very difficult to approve a preliminary plat here and there be an accusation that it doesn't provide for the public health, safety, and welfare, and there's been no engineering done on it. So I would only say that unless you do all the engineering to make sure you don't have those issues, we had one of those here in the last couple of years where there was a pushback on access, and we had to go all the way back through all these different types of transportation impact studies and gap analysis and all that for access. I would only say that I think it puts an added. I think it's better for this body to have had that engineering done, so you do have both a surveyor and a licensed professional engineer that both the jurisdictional authority and those design professionals that can attest to its public health, safety, welfare issue. But that would be my only comment to that. And Dallas, you need to. Let me say this, and I think Dallas started out this way. I think in every situation, we try to resolve issues and we try to make processes better. I think we've done it a couple of cases. I hope Mike would agree that we try to do it in certain situations. But it does, at some point, if you're not following a standard and a policy, it does create an additional burden both on what staff can be doing and should be doing based on what they're not doing. It also, and so again, I would agree that we need to try to improve, and I think we've done that. I don't think that maybe it's terrible the way the process is. I don't think so. I think it's working the way it is.
Ty, can I ask you a question while you're
Yes,
in the
sir.
hot seat and your mic's hot?
Dallas is actually his mic is hot too.
Joe, and you don't have to answer this now, but I would be really curious how many people go through that. How many go through that preliminary meeting, right? So if you go through the prelim meeting, in my world, you probably have something under contract. You've got some earnest money up. You're talking to Mike or whoever, and you're starting to spend some money, and then you go through the preliminary meeting. How many preliminary meetings, is there a ratio that actually get to final approval? Or, is there a fallout rate? Because if that's the case, that's a bunch of people spending money that it's not happening.
I have no idea, but I will tell you that I think we have pushed back a lot on a lot of zoning, engineering, design requirements because of that same comment. You don't want to spend a whole lot of money before you get a property rezoned that you maybe have an option on. But I think the statistic would show that. I don't know. But if you're going to do a major subdivision in Hamilton County or City of Chattanooga, you've bought the property and you're full engaged in the getting it designed, platted, and sold. And so my personal opinion, there's probably a whole lot of minor subdivision plats that fall out, which have no public infrastructure.
Majors.
The majors, I would say most of the majors, you've already made the investment and you're moving forward.
I can provide lots of examples of where a closing is contingent upon all of. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't, when they're sent to us and they go through the pre-submittal meeting,
the only thing I would say is the pre-submittal is required. I would think Mike would attest to this. He meets with my staff all the time on projects, asks questions all the time. So what I would say is, as part of the due diligence in you purchasing property or purchasing for development, you're probably doing a lot of that due diligence with conversations with staff and with conversations with a design professional like Mr. Price that does it, that knows what kind of issues you're going to have. And then the pre-submittal the pre-submittal is so we can get everybody in the room to make sure everybody's saying the same thing. Because the worst thing that happens to us, and again, I'm not over all the jurisdictional authority, but the worst thing that can happen to me is I have staff member tell Mr. Price something, and then I have another jurisdictional authority tell him something different outside of that meeting without that additional input. And then we've got an issue with somebody saying, they said I could do this. Now you're telling me different, and so I don't know. Maybe you have a comment on major subdivision plats, but the process doesn't start at that 30 days. It would be the only thing I would offer. The process starts for the 30 days to get your preliminary plat approved.
Here's what I would say: there's not been a member of the Planning Commission, if I had to guess, ever, maybe other than when I served on there, or maybe David Matthews, when subdivision reviews came through, looked at the engineered drawings, looked at the sewer profiles, looked at the road pro. When's the last time any of y'all did any of those things? You've never done that. And yet we're talking about the preliminary plat process has to be approved by this.
It's because the staff's already done it.
I get that. I understand that. So what I'm asking is the staff still does the same job. Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is I'm asking to be able to start construction before this body says yes. All the other approvals have been done. That's the holdup that we're running into that I think can be avoided. Dallas and his staff will go through and do we've got one right now that we're doing. And if not for a certain member or two of his staff, which will go unnamed, and it's not Dallas's fault, we would have already been under construction. The point being is that it's not an onerous request to simply say, here's a variance. If you want to start construction, if you want to take your risk, developer, go for it. And then when you get your plat recorded here in 2 months or a month and a half or whatever, goody for you. Or you have to get your preliminary plat recorded within 2 months of starting construction. I'm good with that. I'm simply saying, give us a little bit of flexibility to start work instead of being held up for a procedural matter coming up before this body. That's the only ask.
Mike, are there certain conditions that might apply in order to impose that kind of concept? Like, say there's not a steep slope involved, or there's certain criteria. I mean, is there an ideal situation? You mentioned that earlier. An ideal situation, and this is just for food for thought, that could be worked out to trial this idea.
So let's take, say I've got a site, for sake of discussion, that's got an acre of wetlands, 20 acres of 35% slope, and a stream. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got every environmental issue that the staff typically would review and be onerously concerned about, right? I get TDEC approval. Okay? They sign off, say everything you've done is good. City staff signs off and says, Stormwater Department, you're good. We've reviewed your steep slopes. You're good. Your road profiles, you're good. Sewer is approved. Water is approved. Fire hydrant location. Everything is good. The only thing that's lacking at that point, and I'm ready to be issued a land disturbance permit by Dallas's firm, or by office. Okay, so everything is covered. Every department's looked after it. The only thing that's lacking is this planning commission body to vote on it. So why should I not begin construction? Because all the jurisdictional authorities, the inspectors, and everything else will be notified as soon as we pick up the land disturbance permit and go to work.
Mr. Chairman, I'll respond to Councilman Ledford. We did talk to Phil Nobbit about doing something temporary, like a 6-month. Let's work through it for 6 months, see if it works. Correct me if I'm wrong. Phil's response was, no, you got to amend the subregs to change that. Vested rights came into play. It was a huge issue that Phil had concerns with. Phil Nobbit being the city attorney on doing something temporary.
Yeah.
My only hesitation, too, in this, echoing on what Mike and Todd are saying, yes, you go through all the approval, LDO signs off on it, but what happens when the plat comes in front of this body if this body does want to deny it?
Again, if the developer signs the form and says, I'm willing to take the risk, he took the risk.
So you'll take the liability?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I saw Mr. Jones back there pacing, and you have anything you want to add, Mr. Jones? Yeah. Okay. And then Dallas, you can jump in.
The city ran him off, so.
They ran me off. It's definitely an interesting discussion, and it's sitting back here and just listening. There's two different conversations going on. From what I'm hearing from this discussion, is a couple of years ago, yes, for us to do a preliminary plat, we would just submit road profiles, street network, that your basic setbacks and that kind of thing. We get that approved, and then we go engineer it. We do some internal engineering, obviously, before doing a plat. Because a surveyor, I don't know a surveyor in town that's going to do road profiles. I mean, the engineers do it. We give it to the surveyor. So it's being engineered ahead of time. And then you look at the rezoning. To me, I kind of look at the preliminary plats like a rezoning process. Both are for the public input. I think I've had maybe one project in 9 years working in Chattanooga that I've actually engineered for rezoning before we do it, because everything's going to change in the rezone. We don't know what conditions are going to be in a property. We don't know what the public feedback is going to be. If I do a full-blown engineered design on a subdivision concurrently with my preliminary plat, and I get in front of this board and you guys say, hey, we'd rather have a longer turn lane, or we need a third means of access, or which it can happen. We've had things change from preliminary design through, then we have to go back to the redesign process. It's not a heavy redesign process, but it does add time because then we have to go back through that kind of that resubmittal process. So, does it make sense to kind of do the engineering post? I mean, I don't know which one you're arguing for, but to us, it worked great to have the engineering done post preliminary plat. Get the preliminary plat approved, and then get the engineering done and submitted in the county and or city reviews, and then we go break ground. But also to breaking ground, in the city you can do over 5 acres, we can do a mass grading permit. So we can break ground regardless if a preliminary plat's approved. If that's, that's my understanding. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Is that even in the planning commission's purview, your process? It's not, is it?
neither is this one either. The city-
The subdivision review, the subdivision regulations are in this purview. I mean, they come through this body.
The subdivision, but your process of how you accept a preliminary plat is that even the business of this planning commission?
You're talking about engineering plans that meet certain
Yeah,
requirements?
for instance, if there was a consensus up here that said, hey, we think it's better just to use the old way than the new way, does that fall under the planning commission? I don't even know.
Well, we'll say in the city, we're talking about the city here now, you can do a preliminary plat. If I'm wrong, Lisa, you can do road profiles and sewer profiles. That's all that's required. That gets approved by the planning commission, like the old process they're talking about. Then you submit your civil plans. I think in Mike's case, the project that started all this, that civil plan was submitted back in June. No plat. You just acted on the plat today. We had to write a letter to the LDO that the plat was on today's agenda. So that was submitted back in June before the plat ever got in front of you guys. So that process is still the same. You do a plat, comes in front of this body, gets approved, and then Mike or Alan submits the civil plans to LDO for their review. It's just this time it was reversed. And now we're looking at our regs to change because of that. County, yes, we do a pre-submittal up front. We have now required engineering plans to be submitted because the county doesn't have an LDO team, if you will, to review that.
We have multiple
That's
jurisdictions.
the multiple jurisdictions. That is
Hey,
why it's
Dallas,
different.
come back up to the thing. You're up. And we will wrap it up. I do think there's some interesting. I do think we are interested in the planning commission as a body to give some direction, and if that's some additional conversation or additional direction, I think that's appropriate. Dallas,
As the head coach of the team there, I would like to say, we're like I said, we're trying to figure out our processes, and Mike is right. Technically, we're not supposed to be even look at some stuff, but I know we have some tripwires in there that some people have to have some information to make sure they're making the right call. But I've tried to tell people, staff, that if there's something you can look at and we can get a little further down the road, of course, those are usually the easier reviews to do anyway, and hardly ever hold the project up. I mean, we're looking at ways to get out of the way as much as possible, but I mean, we still need certain information to make sure we're close. Because when we approve these things and they take off and they run with it, then we don't need to be tweaking it too much from that point forward. And there's always going to be a few little minor things, and we know that and we understand that. But I don't really understand the county's process, so I can't speak to that. But we need it. I think we need at least what we're requiring now, and we do so much conditional zoning. It's kind of nice to know what those conditions are, and like you said, how many buffers have we lost or didn't word them exactly right, and just put a no build in there, but didn't realize that we really wanted to keep the buffer too, and we just put you can't build there, but that doesn't mean you can't clear there. So, it's an ongoing process, but I think what he described as a plat's probably some basic information that we need to know, that at least we've thought about laying it out. And, but it's, I don't know where it's going to go with the bond and the subdivisions and going ahead and selling lots from there. So that's something else that's coming at us right now. So.
thanks, Dallas. Mike, I'm going to let you have the last. We're going to wrap this up because I know we have a someone that wants to spend a little bit of time in public comment. So if you would, and then we can have a short directional discussion, and then we can move on.
Yeah, again, I appreciate everybody's time. But don't overcomplicate this. It's a simple request, and that is just to have a variance that if you've got all of your engineering documents in order and you want to take the risk to begin work before it comes to this body, you should have that ability to sign that form. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do we just want to leave this as an open item on the agenda? Is that fair? And I know Mr. Price will be here, so. Okay, let's. I think that was healthy discussion. I said I'd let him have the last word, but I mean, we do. Let me only say this. I think we do have a responsibility. And again, we have a responsibility to the developers and the engineers and the surveyors to be prompt and review professionally and make sure. But we also have a obligation to the public to make sure that process is transparent and it goes through an appropriate process. And I'm not saying anything that nobody up here doesn't already know, but that's sort of our charge. So that's what we try to do.
Mr. Chairman, are you talking about just leaving it on the agenda? Because next month we have a really large agenda. Do you want to push it to November?
Let's push it to November. I'm not going to be here next month.
Okay.
Okay. Thank y'all for that discussion. We have public comments on non-agenda items. I believe we've got one.
We got two, I believe. Mr. Ali, is it Ali? I think he's first, and then we have Mr. Jim Stewart, I believe, second. And I have presentations from them, too.
Okay, if you would, sir, come on up and give us your name and address. And do we have a time restriction? We have a 7-minute.
Hey, my name is Shazman Ali, 772 Warlick Way in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I have got a lot on 1311 Spears Avenue. It's in North Shore, and just to give you kind of an overview, so the lot's 50 foot deep by 40 wide. Due to current setbacks, the buildable square footage is only about 300 square foot, being a 10 by 30. And I've been through the Board of Zoning Appeals, tried everything, even tried contacting the city council rep. My main goal is we need some kind of variance where we can build a little bit bigger, because 300 square foot, that's basically a tiny house. And the setback, the way it is 25 feet from the back, 15 from the street. We don't have any neighbors that are opposed, to our back setbacks, and we've tried explaining that to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And both of my neighbors have also tried getting some kind of variance for this topic, but it's just not happening. So really just, I know I talked with the RPA, and they said there is some kind of review going on for infield lots of this type. So just kind of urging y'all to help us out in some way. If we could, at my very final zoning appeal thing, I was only asking for a 5-foot reduction from the front and the back. And they had declined. Well, they didn't decline it. They keep tying. So 4 said yes, 4 said no. Eventually, Scott McAlpin said, "You've tied twice, and if you don't pass twice, you basically failed." So he said, "We're going to decline it," basically. So that's kind of what I'm dealing with. Again, not asking for too much. It's instead of a 10 by 30, it would just increase me to 20 by 30, which would give me 600 feet. And there is a house that is like a really close to my current lot. It's at 105 Lawn Street. It's like the other street over. This house is from 1997, so I'm sure the rules were different back then, but it is exactly 600 square feet, and their lot is exactly the same as mine. Theirs is also 40 by 50, and they've managed to build, this. It's a pretty decent sized house. So just wanted to bring this issue up to you guys, because I haven't been able to get any progress from any direction, basically.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stewart, if you want to come up, I think, do you have his presentation, Brian?
I do. I'm loading it right now.
Okay. And if you'll give us your name and address, you've got 7 minutes.
My name's Jim Stewart, 13015 Emerald Bay Drive. That's in District 1, Northern Hamilton County. Before I start, thank you all for being here and listening to some public comments. I've been observing and documenting some of the development I've been seeing in my part of the county for pretty much since early this year. And instead of just complaining, I wanted to come to you with a suggestion for how I think that situation could be improved. Next slide. I think you all know people love the natural beauty in Hamilton County, both people who live here now and people who want to move here. We've been here for 2 years. That's one of the main reasons that we moved here. Next slide. And visitors come here because of our natural beauty. I think you all know the types of outdoor events we have here. You know, when you ask someone in another part of the country, what's Chattanooga known for? It's known for beautiful mountains. It's known for beautiful waterways. And it's an economic engine for us. So next slide. But we all know growth is also highly valued. So how do we balance natural beauty, which is prized by all of us, and growth? And next slide. What I've been discovering through research is that a tree board can help. So next slide. These are some of the tree boards in the region. As far as I've been able to tell, there's 2 in Hamilton County, in Signal Mountain and Chattanooga. I've just gotten approval from the Soddy Daisy Commission to explore setting one up in Soddy Daisy as well. There's some very effective ones in the metro areas I've listed here, which I think are of appropriate size to consider for Hamilton County. So Knoxville, Nashville, Charlotte, Asheville, Atlanta, and altogether there's about 25 tree boards across Tennessee. Next slide. All the mission statements of these tree boards are about the same. Maybe I'll just read Knoxville's. The board assists in disseminating news and information regarding the selection, planting, establishment, and maintenance of trees, and advising the City Council on desirable legislation concerning the city's tree program. So that's what tree boards are all about. Next slide. They typically focus on 3 things: education and outreach, planting of trees, which is the most visible to the public sometimes, and tree protection. Next slide. I won't go through all of these slides, but education is a big focus area for a lot of the tree boards. In fact, I'll be involved with an activity run by the Master Gardeners in a couple weekends. We're having our fall festival. We're going to be talking about tree care, tree maintenance, et cetera. I'll be joined by members of the Chattanooga Tree Commission. I'm inviting people from the Signal Mountain Tree Board as well. I'll be representing both the Master Gardeners and the hopefully the newly created Soddy Daisy Tree Board. So a lot of education, and people are very interested in learning more about trees. Next slide. Planting trees. A lot of times this revolves around Arbor Day celebrations, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. And a lot of tree boards focus on plantings on public property, but also they can provide low-cost or free trees to people on private property as well. And then the third goal on the next slide is tree protection. I don't know if some of you have seen some of the tree canopy assessment work that has been done by UTC. They work with the Thrive Regional Partnership. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they've done a comprehensive tree canopy assessment of all of Hamilton County and the tri-state area. And the idea of that, one aspect of that is that you do it every 5 years or so to see basically if you're making progress in protecting trees, if you're getting worse. A key thing, which is maybe the hardest part of what a tree board needs to do, and that's working with bodies like yourself and developing enforceable tree ordinances that can protect trees while allowing for responsible commercial and residential development. So that's part of that balance that I was talking about before. Next slide. Here are some good examples of tree protection ordinances. If any of you look at this PowerPoint, these are all links to what all these metro areas are doing. Again, Nashville, Knoxville, Charlotte, Atlanta, Asheville. Hilton Head Island, if anyone is familiar with that, has some excellent wetlands and tree protection ordinances. Next slide. Why do we need these ordinances? And this is how I got started down this path of research this year. Every development I see in northern Hamilton County follows the same process. First, every tree is cut down. Then all the vegetation and topsoil is removed. And then third, if there's any hillsides, they're flattened. So the question I have for you is, do we want this county to become a hot, flat, treeless landscape? I don't think we do. Next slide. This is a typical development in northern Hamilton County. This one has to be off Armstrong Road. They're all like this. I was alerted to this when one of my neighbors heard some machinery in his backyard and looked outside, and they were just tearing every tree down, acres and acres. Next slide. These are some more examples of what's going on. And again, every development I look like, and again, northern Hamilton County is still very heavily wooded, but every development is just destroying the landscape in the same way here. Next slide. So what I would like to do, I've been speaking with the Saudi Daisy government, but I'd really like to look to this body here to see if you would support creating a tree board for all of Hamilton County, to look at the county as a whole, work with other tree boards in the county, including in Chattanooga and Signal Mountain. There's volunteers like myself who will help, and I would love to discuss this in detail with whoever you could direct me to in the county. I'm willing to spend the time. Other people will do it. I just need someone to work with. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it and would love to have further discussion on this.
Thank you. And Mr. Stewart, did you? Oh, you've got your stuff on here, your email address. I just want to make sure we had contact information.
If you can point me to anyone to work with, I have the energy and the time to do it. So happy to help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. A motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Well, do I have a second on the minutes? Sure. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Motion to adjourn, Barry Payne. So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you.